Chapter 424. There were 6 Tao ancestors in Taoism and 3 Buddhist ancestors in Buddhism. They were all powerful people who had stood above all living beings since ancient times and had become peerless powerhouses. Putting aside the 6 Tao ancestors, Buddhism had 3 Buddhas. One of them was the Mahavairakana Buddha. It was said that his Mahavairakana mantra was comprehended when he attained Tao. It had a supreme power that could shock the world and make ghosts and gods weep. Once it was used, 10 suns would appear in the sky. He was the present Buddha. The second was the reincarnation Buddha. He had the power of yin and yang. He had a divine ability called the 6 paths of reincarnation. It was so powerful that it could be said to be heaven-defying. It could directly send people into reincarnation. It would reincarnate endlessly into reincarnation and obliterate your soul. Legend had it that even the ancient giants whose bodies were indestructible and souls were difficult to bury would have their souls obliterated by this divine ability and be completely crushed into powder. It was truly terrifying. He was the future Buddha. As for the third Buddha, he was the past Maitreya Buddha. He was the most mysterious. Every one of them was a peerless powerhouse. Even in ancient times, they were the top powerhouses. Now they stood at the peak of all living beings. They had become Buddhas. The celestial wheel was a treasure that the reincarnation Buddha had refined before he attained Tao. It contained the power of the heavens. When used, it could transform into 3,000 wheels. It was like a millstone that could crush the enemy into powder. Its power was far greater than that of ordinary spiritual treasures. Although it was an acquired spiritual treasure, it was still a high-grade spiritual treasure. It was very rare. That's right. I have already divined the secrets of heaven and found that this celestial wheel should be auctioned as the finale treasure at the end of the auction. This treasure has endless power. I'm afraid it's just a replica. We can only confirm if it's real or fake when we see it with our own eyes. Shingon smiled meaningfully. There was an inexplicable charm in his gaze as he looked outside. You're right. When have the 3 of us ever paid for anything in the heavenly realm? We have always done business without any capital. Once its authenticity is verified, that treasure will not be able to escape from my empty-handed divine skill. An excited expression appeared on Lan Yu's face. She extended her right hand and placed it in front of her eyes. Her hands were incomparably slender and sparkling like jade. They were even more beautiful than a woman's hands, as if they were the work of the heavens. There seemed to be a pair of invisible gloves on his hands. He was brimming with confidence. That's true, but don't make a mistake with your star-seizing hand when the time comes. Otherwise, I'll have Master Shingon talk to you in private. Qin Yuan's eyes flashed with a dangerous light. Lan Yu's expression changed on the spot. His entire body unnaturally shivered. Even now, he still remembered what happened when Shingon dragged him over to chat with him. He didn't want to experience that a second time. He quickly said, Shingon, you'd better call them away quickly. If they continue to fight like this, who knows how long the auction will last. Shingon revealed a smile. He flicked the horsetail whisk in his hand and said with a bright face, This is my strong suit. A light flashed on his body and a figure flew out. It quickly turned into the same appearance as Shingon Hu. He wore a Taoist robe and had the demeanor of a transcendent being. He smiled as he walked out of the VIP room. A snow-white cloud appeared under his feet as he entered the profound ceiling barrier. This was his divine soul leaving his body. Fight! 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 Everywhere I go, all things will submit. I am the ruler of the heavens and earth. Anyone who disobeys, kill. Kill. Kill them all. Inside the profound ceiling barrier, Disher Tian held the tiger soul in his hand. His body emitted an incomparably dense aura of an emperor. Compared to other intents, he had a great advantage. In front of him, any intent realm would be suppressed by 30%. The tiger soul's sharpness was limitless. Wherever the tip of the blade pointed, it was invincible. There were no schemes or tricks. Everything was a head-on fight. His tyrannical and decisive methods destroyed the intents one after another. He didn't care about his own injuries and pressed forward. Every time he fought, he was incomparably fierce. Fight! 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 What he fought with was this indomitable aura. Even if both sides were to suffer, he didn't care. What he wanted was this fearlessness. As an emperor, he could only advance and not retreat. The fight was extremely tragic. Even his body was almost smashed into pieces a few times. However, after continuously devouring other intents to strengthen his body, the body that he condensed gradually turned from an illusory form to a more solid one. It was constantly moving towards a more solid form. Kill. The tiger soul shot out a few 100 feet long saber light. It was as if it was splitting a green mountain into two from top to bottom. The endless saber chi that erupted shattered the mountain into pieces. With a casual wave of his hand, he swept the shattered intents to his side, turning them into specks of light and merging them into his body. After merging with his body, the injuries that he had suffered before quickly recovered and became even more solid. His eyes swept across his surroundings. In the entire profound ceiling barrier, there were only a few dozen intents left. Each of them was several times stronger than before. They emitted a powerful aura. Obviously, they had obtained some inexplicable benefits from a fight. Fellow Taoists, it's raining and thundering, so go home and collect your clothes. Suddenly, in the profound ceiling barrier, a calm voice reached everyone's ears. When the voice came out, it was as if the space in the barrier had strangely paused for a moment. There was a hint of intimacy and gentleness in the voice. It made people have a good impression of it. You're courting death. Next to Shingong Hu, a blood-colored banner moved. Tens of thousands of blood-colored swords, carrying traces of evil energy, swept toward the godlike Shingong Hu. Next to him, there was a skull the size of a small mountain. It opened its hideous mouth and let out a screech as it bit toward him. Damn, it's the Shingong family. That unlucky star. Di Shirtian originally had his back facing Shingong Hu. When he heard the word fellow Taoist, his heart trembled a few times and his expression changed. He looked around and didn't even think about fighting the other intents. He turned into a ray of black light and rushed out of the profound ceiling barrier. After returning to his body, his originally closed eyes suddenly opened. It was him, the god of plague, the god of misfortune was also here. The corner of Di Shirtian's mouth twitched. Looking at Shengong, whose godlike appearance, he recognized him at a glance. This was the person he met a few days ago on the Celestial Island, the person who caused him to be plagued by misfortune for 3 days. He would never forget that voice for the rest of his life. When he heard the word fellow Taoist, he didn't stop at all. He simply didn't want to meet him. Haha, it's good that you left. The god of misfortune is here. If you leave too slowly, you'll be unlucky again. TSK. Look, there are still a few people who aren't afraid of death and dare to attack him. It will be a good show to watch. Dark had a gloating expression on her face as she watched the scene in the mysterious ceiling barrier with great interest. Kacha, Rumble, facing the attacks from both sides, Shingong, who wasn't afraid at all. He didn't even try to dodge. He just stood on the cloud and smiled as he looked at the countless sabers and the terrifying skeleton coming at him. It was as if he was waiting to be captured. However, when they were about to touch his body, the entire mysterious ceiling barrier was filled with dark clouds. Bolts of lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. 2 bolts of lightning as thick as buckets fell from the sky and struck the skeleton and the blood banner. In front of them, there was a torrential downpour. These raindrops were like unstoppable sharp swords, drowning the thousands of sabers in an instant. This is the 5-element divine thunder. What kind of rain is this? It is sharper than a knife. How can there be thunder and rain here? It can't be this strange. They couldn't touch Shengong Hu's body at all. They could only see the endless storm and lightning in the sky turn the skeleton and the blood banner into dust on the spot. Large amounts of lightning and rain were distributed in every inch of space in the barrier, except for where Shengong Hu was. On the spot, everything in the area was either shattered by the lightning or pierced by the rainstorm, turning into sieves. This strange situation shocked Ding Dang and the others so much that their hearts almost jumped out of their chests. They rushed out of the barrier against the lightning, but it also caused great damage to their intent realms. Thunder and rain? Go home and collect your clothes? Sakura looked at the scene in the mysterious ceiling enchantment boundary. Although he was somewhat glad that he left quickly, he was still quite speechless by Shungonghu's thunderous words. He secretly sighed with emotion. This Shungong family is really a bunch of evil guys. Even talking to him will bring bad luck. If he himself says something, it can really come true. Could it be a curse spell, golden mouth and jade words? Or a prophecy spell, blurted words? TSK, TSK, tens of thousands of lightning bolts and rain like sabers. How spectacular! Dark let out a strange cry and said with emotion, "It is said that Shungong, the star of calamity, has boundless evil energy. He has the most evil body in the world. His mouth is more powerful than any curse spell. Whatever he said, as long as he thought about it, it would be as good as gold. Whatever he said would come true. However, in the beginning, only those who harbored ill intentions towards him would be able to harm him. In the second stage, even if the other party didn't harbor any ill intentions towards him, he could still cause misfortune to cultivators of the same cultivation level as him. In the third stage, whatever he says will come true. Even an unparalleled expert will have a headache. Looking at the current situation, he should be able to use the power of the second stage. He has already unsealed his 10,000 evil body twice. So powerful. When Dishurtian saw this scene, he couldn't help but think, if he can help me by my side, then there is no need to worry about my 10,000 Demon Valley not rising. With his evil body, it will be difficult to coexist with him. Indeed, if anyone could have the help of an evil person like Shungonghu, it would definitely be a good thing. Thinking about it, Shungonghu's existence itself was a powerful deterrent. At the critical moment, his mouth was amazing. It could be compared to thousands of soldiers and horses. The terrifying thing was that he couldn't resist the power of misfortune. She had only exchanged a few words with him, but she had been unlucky for 3 whole days. If one wanted to be friends with him for a long time, one wouldn't know how unlucky they would be. If they would be haunted by misfortune every day, even if they weren't killed by it, they would go crazy. It was too evil, too terrifying. Lunatic D, you want to take advantage of Shungong? Dark's tone was full of surprise. After pondering for a moment, he said, "Actually, it's not impossible. You can even absorb the power of desires of the 7 emotions and 6 desires for your own use. It can be said that you and Shungong are the same kind. If you can comprehend a few more types of power of desires, then perhaps even Shungong's misfortune won't be able to entangle you." Evil? The 10,000 evils was none other than the most terrifying power of desire. Desire was the condensation of the boundless negative thoughts of all life in the world, the most evil. However, at this moment, Sakura only grasped 2 of them. If he grasped a few more and allowed himself to be closer to the power of desire, at that time, he could be said to be impervious to the 10,000 evils. Even Shungong's misfortune couldn't fall on him. Whoosh! The mysterious ceiling barrier suddenly disappeared, and everything in the auction house returned to normal. There was no sound in the VIP room, as if it had been damaged in the previous battle. But below, a large number of cultivators were bustling with noise and excitement. Terrifying, it's really terrifying. I heard from my master that he can condense his aura and intent into a form. It's said that it can only be done when one reaches the tribulation stage. Just now, hundreds of powerhouses above the tribulation stage were competing. Strong, that's really strong. It would be great if I could do it one day. Amazing. The Linglong Pavilion is indeed the Linglong Pavilion. They just took out a random item and set up such a powerful barrier. So many powerhouses couldn't break it even when they fought. I can't even feel the slightest bit of aura here. Who is that Taoist with the demeanor of a transcendent Taoist? He's really terrifying. He only said a few words, and thunder rumbled and rain rained. All the powerhouses were chased out in an instant. Amazing, really amazing. There was a lot of discussion in the auction house. Everyone's eyes were filled with excitement. They were happy to talk about the short battle between the powerhouses above the tribulation stage. Clack! At this moment, the hammer in Liu Tion's hand fell heavily on the auction stage. The crisp sound of the hammer rang in everyone's ears, and everyone's attention was focused on him again. He chuckled, and his face was flushed red. He said, "Number 14, the final bid is 1.5 billion. No one increased the price. This plate obliteration pill was won by number 14 at the final price of 1.5 billion. Now, let's auction the next treasure." He didn't mention the previous fierce battle at all, as if nothing had happened. Moreover, he directly hammered the hammer and finalized the final price of the plate obliteration pill. It was sold at the final price of 1.5 billion that Di Shirtian bid. Then the auction continued. Immediately, a maidservant from the Linglong Pavilion brought the obliteration plate pill to the VIP room he was in. "Seniors, this is the plate obliteration pill that you bought. Please check it and accept it." In just a moment, a girl who would be considered to be of high quality in the secular world appeared in front of Di Shirtian, and by who with the plate obliteration pill. Looking at the purple jade bottle, Di Shirtian carefully picked it up. He first covered the jade bottle with his royal true force. When he opened the bottle, a strange fragrance came out of the bottle and rushed into his nose. Immediately, the royal true force in his body was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. It crazily flowed through the demon meridians in his body. The speed of circulation was 10 times faster than usual. Just a wisp of the strange fragrance increased the royal true force by a bit. It was less than a month of hard cultivation. It's the plate obliteration pill. There's no mistake. There's a wisp of heavenly phoenix fire in it. Ming said with certainty. Just that wisp of heavenly phoenix fire was enough to prove its authenticity. He couldn't be wrong about this. Good. Di Shirtian took the plate obliteration pill. A light flashed in his hand, and a jade box appeared. He threw the jade box to the maid and said, "I don't have any spirit stones. Give the item in the jade box to your manager to evaluate and see if it's worth this plate obliteration pill." The item in the jade box was naturally the source of life from before. He didn't know before entering, but now that he had taken action, he realized that spirit stones were really useless. Auctioning a single pill had earned him 1.5 billion. In terms of billions, the spirit stones he had were not even a fraction. The most valuable thing that could be used to repay the debt was this source of life. The maid had obviously been trained and didn't show any disdain. Her expression was still respectful. She carefully held the jade box in her hand and left the VIP room. Source of life, it's really the source of life. This huge amount of life essence is exactly the same as the source of life I saw before. After a short while, the jade box appeared in front of Yu Linglong. She opened the jade box and saw the dark green, gem-like source seed sitting quietly in the jade box. Her eyes clearly lit up. Even her hands couldn't help but tremble slightly. Who is the person in room 14? Such a precious source of life can be taken out just like that. However, no matter who it is, they can't be underestimated. Yu Linglong looked at the source of life in the jade box, and her eyes became blurry. She suddenly stood up, picked up the jade box, and walked out. Just because of this source of life, she had already decided to personally meet that man and woman. After a while, in a pavilion in the VIP room, Yu Linglong, Di Shirtian, and Baihu sat around a jade table. The jade box containing the source of life was placed on the table, and so was the plate obliteration pill. It's Linglong's fortune that the two of you can come to my Linglong Pavilion. However, the two of you look unfamiliar. May I know your names? Looking at Di Shirtian, Yu Linglong smiled and said. Her voice was like the sound of nature, and it could make one's soul tremble. It was a rare pleasure to listen to. A light flashed in Sakra's eyes. He also carefully looked at Yu Linglong's body. He didn't know why, but she always wore that black bamboo hat on her head. This bamboo hat had the power to shield the divine sense. He couldn't see the face under the bamboo hat. She looked very mysterious. He had seen her once outside the heaven-reaching tower. Naturally, he knew that she was the current pavilion master of the Linglong Pavilion, Yu Linglong. My surname is Chun, and this is my cultivation partner. Di Shirtion calmly introduced them. He didn't have any intention to dwell on this topic. He smiled faintly and said, I'm sure Fairy Linglong can see the item in the box. I wonder how many spirit stones this source of life is worth. He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. As he asked, he quietly looked at Yu Linglong's face. Although she was covered by the bamboo hat, his eyes seemed to be able to see through her. 100 million. Yu Linglong decisively named a price. Winter is too cold, and even my hands are a little stiff from the cold. My typing speed has also slowed down. After adjusting for such a long time, I'll probably be able to update normally tomorrow or the day after. It's the end of the month. Please help me if you have a ticket. Chapter 425. 100 million. Sakura slightly frowned as he asked in return. Yu Linglong smiled faintly and said, To be honest, the source of life and the source of the world are both precious treasures of heaven and earth. They are treasures that everyone wants. However, the source of the world and the source of the world depend on each other. They can stimulate the source of the world inside the source of the world to create the inner world. The inner world has an irreplaceable function, not to mention 100 million, even if it is 1 billion or several billion. There will be people fighting for it. In today's world, source seeds of life are extremely scarce, so the price is unimaginable. However, in a Linglong Pavilion, it can only be worth 100 million spirit stones. As if she saw the doubt in Di Shirtian's eyes and was afraid that he would misunderstand, she said without lying. Her voice was very calm, and she didn't feel guilty at all for selling the source seed at 100 million spirit stones. She was panicking. Oh, why is that? White Fox, who had been listening quietly by the side, asked with a smile. There was a hint of suspicion in her eyes. According to what she said, the source seed should be worth more than 100 million spirit stones. How could it only be worth 100 million spirit stones? I'm not too sure about this, but I've heard my mother say that since ancient times, whether it's a life source seed or a world source seed, if you want to trade them, the price has always been fixed with a base of 100 million. No matter what, one source seed is worth 100 million spirit stones. Yu Linglong said calmly, This rule has been passed down until today, and no one has changed it. Therefore, Linglong was unable to offer a higher price for it. I wonder if you still want to use the source seed as a trade item? At this moment, a trace of concern appeared in her voice. She didn't lie about the source seed. It had always been like this. However, the problem was that in this world, other than Di Shirtian, who had obtained such a large amount of source seeds by luck, who would use them as a trade item. Dark, is what Yu Linglong said true? Di Shirtian asked Dark in his mind. That's right. I've told you before. No matter if it's the life source seed or the world source seed, they're incomparably precious treasures. You're lucky to encounter the most mysterious corpse-devouring flower of the Savage Beast clan. Do you think anyone can encounter the corpse-devouring flower? They're good at hiding, and they won't stay in the same place for too long. They can move around at any time. Even in the Tower of Babel, they're not restricted and can move around freely. Even if others know the wonders of the corpse-devouring flower, they can't find it. Next time, you won't have such a chance. Ming's words were filled with a tone of you don't even know how lucky you are. So that's how it is. Di Shirtian understood and looked at Yu Linglong. His hand flashed, and he took out another 14 source seeds. Including the one in the box, he had 15 source seeds. According to the calculation, each source seed was worth 100 million. So it was exactly worth 1.5 billion for the plate obliteration pill. He pushed the jade box to Yu Linglong and said, Here are the 15 source seeds. They are worth 1.5 billion. Fairy, please accept them. Yu Linglong didn't argue and carefully checked the source seeds. After confirming that there were no mistakes, the transaction was settled. One received the source seeds, while the other received the plate obliteration pills. The transaction was officially completed. Outside, the intense auction was still going on. In the blink of an eye, several rare treasures were sold for sky-high prices. Although they weren't as precious as the plate obliteration pill, to ordinary cultivators, they were still precious treasures that they couldn't afford in their lifetime. However, Tirtian didn't care about any of those treasures. What I wanted those precious spirit essences and powerful refining materials. The mysterious heavenly myriad pivot diagram and the God-confining sphere are items that I must obtain. At most, I will use money to crush them. While paying attention to the progress of the auction, Tirtian secretly made up his mind. No matter what, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, he wouldn't give up on the mysterious heavenly myriad pivot diagram and the God-confining sphere. They would be very beneficial to his next plan. No matter what, there was no reason to give up. He had hundreds of thousands of source seeds. He didn't believe that anyone could compete with him in terms of wealth. At that moment, Yu Linglong, who had carefully put away the jade box containing the source seeds, looked up at him and said with a smile, "Brother Chun, Madam Chun, I have something to ask the two of you. Please speak." Tirtian pondered for a moment before turning his head and nodding his head. He was aware of Yu Linglong's identity. She could be considered the current pavilion master of the Linglong Pavilion. Based on her identity, no one would dare look down on her. I wonder if Brother Chun still has a source seed like this? What do you mean? Tirtian raised his eyebrows when he heard her. A strong pressure gushed out from between his brows. His eyes were filled with power as he looked at Yu Linglong. Even the surrounding air became somewhat oppressive. The weight on his shoulder was as heavy as Mount Tai. His expression seemed to indicate that he was about to attack if something went wrong. The source seed of life was a treasure. It was his greatest trump card of the moment. At the same time, there was also a sharp blade hanging over his head. He didn't know when it would fall and cut him in half. The temptation of the source seed of life was too great. However, he didn't have the absolute strength to protect it. If it was exposed, it would be a disaster. This was also the reason why he didn't want to trade the source seed of life. Now, he had no other choice. Yu Linglong sat steadily and didn't move at all. She was secretly surprised by the aura emitted from Sakura's body, but she didn't panic. She smiled and said, "Dao friend, please don't misunderstand. Linglong doesn't want to know the origin of Dao friend's life source. I just want to do a business with Dao friend." Her tone was neither slow nor hurried. She didn't seem to be affected by Tirtian at all. "A deal." Tirtian's eyes flashed. He asked in a deep voice how, since Brother Chun entered the Linglong Pavilion and participated in this auction, you must have taken a fancy to some treasures. As the pavilion master of the Linglong Pavilion, I can still make decisions on some small matters. For example, I can remove a treasure from the auction and sell it privately. There's no need to go through the auction. She elegantly pinched a 1,000-year-old vermilion fruit between her fingers and lightly played with it. It seemed that she didn't care about it all. What? Sakura couldn't help but be startled in his heart. His gaze towards Yu Linglong was abnormally bright as he understood the meaning behind her words. To actually be able to carry out a transaction in private without going through the auction's procedures. This matter could be big or small, but to him, it was a rare opportunity. When he thought of the meaning behind this, even he could not help but inwardly take a deep breath. His eyes flickered as he said, "What you're saying is that if I want anything, you can exchange it for it at the auction and make a private transaction with me here, and the item in the transaction must be replaced by the source of life. I don't know if my understanding is wrong." That's right. The source seed of life is a rare treasure in the world. As long as Brother Chun is willing to use it as a bargaining chip, it's fine even if those treasures aren't auctioned. Yu Linglong said without hiding anything. Tirtian didn't immediately answer. He just closed his eyes slightly and secretly thought about it in his mind. Indeed, this was definitely a rare opportunity for him. If it wasn't auctioned and didn't compete with others, the price would definitely be much lower than the final price in the auction. Baihu didn't interrupt again when he was talking with Yu Linglong. She just sat quietly to one side and listened while also thinking about some things in her mind. Source seed of life? She had only just found out about this. All along, Tirtian hadn't told her anything about it, but she could understand the mystery behind it. She only thought to herself, "I never thought that Tirtian would have such a treasure." In the future, I'll have to ask him where he got this treasure from. I heard that the source seed of the world tree will mature soon. At that time, if I obtain the world seed and have the source seed of life activate the source seed of life, won't I be able to have my own inner world? The more she thought about it, the more excited she became. Having an inner world of one's own was the dream and desire of almost all experts. Only those who had an inner world had the opportunity to step onto the peak. It also had endless uses. I won't ask for the imperial heavenly treasure box. With my relationship with him, it shouldn't be a big problem for him to give me a few source seeds of life. I heard that the more source seeds used to nourish the world seed, the more perfect the world seed will be and the more potential it will have. There's also the legend of the perfect source seed of life. By who kept thinking about it in her mind. Her mind had already shifted away from the auction. She didn't have the heart to pay attention to anything else. All right. Shirtian's shout brought her back to her senses. She turned to look at him. Shirtian's expression was solemn. He said in a deep voice, "Since Fairy Ling Long is so considerate, I won't be unreasonable. This time, I do have a few treasures that I want to see. If you can bring them out to trade now, I'll remember it in my heart." After thinking for a moment, he finally made up his mind. He also thought of some treasures that he saw in the immortal mirror and liked. Yuling Long was also delighted. She hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist, you're too serious. May I know what treasures you've taken a fancy to? Please tell me, and I'll ask my maids to bring them over." As she spoke, she extended her jade-like hands and clapped them twice. Immediately, a maid standing guard outside pushed open the door and entered. She stood respectfully at the side and waited for instructions. After giving some instructions, she asked Shirtian to name the treasures he wanted. Heavenly Star, Divine Meteorite Iron, 10,000-year Ironwood Core, 10,000-year Warm Jade, 7 apertures Exquisite Stone, Myriad Pivot Diagram of the Secret of Heaven, God Sealing Sphere. Sakura didn't hesitate as soon as he opened his mouth and casually pointed out one after another incomparably precious treasures. Each of them could be said to be the most exquisite and the most precious items in this auction. Yuling Long was inwardly shocked when she heard that. Most of the items mentioned were listed in the celestial mirror. However, the mysterious heavenly myriad pivot diagram and the God-trapping sphere were not listed in the celestial mirror. She had only decided to add them to the list after discussing with her mother. Before the auction, other than a few people, no one else knew about them. However, at this moment, it came from Sakura's mouth. How could she not be surprised? She thought to herself, how does he know so much about the auction treasures? Could it be that he has the ability to divine and divine? In her heart, she felt that he was even more unfathomable. She also regarded him more highly in her heart. Luer, take my token and bring these items over. After a long time, when Shirtian finished speaking, Yuling Long gave the maid an order and gave her a token. She told her to bring the treasures over. Yes, the maid nodded and followed her out. To think that she is using a conical bamboo hat to cover her appearance. I'll give it a try. This conical bamboo hat can't block my divine eyes. After saying all the things that he had taken a fancy to in advance, he saw Yuling Long turning sideways to entrust the maid. Indra suddenly had an impulse to see what kind of appearance Yuling Long had under the bamboo hat all along looked like. It was undeniable that a trace of curiosity had arisen in his heart. As far as he knew, this Yuling Long seemed to have worn a conical bamboo hat every day since she was young. Aside from her personal maid, no one else had seen her appearance. She appeared extremely mysterious. Xiao Chun had met her twice. The first time was outside the sky-reaching pagoda, and the second time was here. The situation was the same both times. She always wore a conical bamboo hat. That conical bamboo hat had the miraculous ability to block spiritual sense. It prevented others from seeing the face under the conical bamboo hat. Whoosh! With a thought, Shirtian saw a flash of purple light on the purple mark on his forehead. He swept it toward Yuling Long. He wanted to use the power of the heaven's punishment divine eyes to see if he could see her true appearance. When his gaze landed on the bamboo hat, he felt as if there was an invisible barrier in front of him. It looked like a water curtain, but it was extremely tough. Even his divine sense could not penetrate this invisible barrier. However, the heaven's punishment divine eye was still the heaven's punishment divine eye. It was powerful and mysterious. The bamboo hat could block divine sense, but in front of the divine eye, it was like a thin layer of window paper. It easily penetrated it. As if he could see through it, he saw the scenery under the conical bamboo hat. Impossible. With just a single glance, Sakura instantly withdrew the energy of the divine eye, and it was as if a violent storm had been swept up in his heart, causing 1,000 layers of enormous waves to be swept up, and a type of unrestrainable astonishment swept through his mind like tidewater. Even his eyes flashed with a hint of disbelief. It was as if he had seen something that he couldn't believe at that moment. How could it be her? How could they look so similar? Exactly the same. It's really exactly the same. Back then, in the Heavenly Monster secret realm, although he had only seen Heavenly Monster ZU once, the impression at that time was extremely deep. It had been branded in his mind, and he could not forget it. That face was even more impossible to forget. Just now, he used the power of the divine eyes to see through the conical bamboo hat. The appearance under the conical bamboo hat was exactly the same as ZU's. There was almost no difference. Back then, ZU's appearance was very ordinary. She could only be considered delicate and pretty at the level of a pretty girl from a humble family. However, at first glance, she was unremarkable and very ordinary. However, at second glance, her appearance became very hazy, and there was an indescribable sense of beauty. Looking at her a few more times, one would only see a mysterious look on her face. He could not even remember her face in his mind. But it was this mystery that left an indelible deep impression in his mind. No, she's missing a mark on her forehead. Xiaochen looked around and finally discovered something different. There was a purple crescent moon mark on Ziyu's forehead, but there was none on her body. This made her look similar, but not divine. She lacked the charm that Xiaochen had when he looked at Ziyu. We will meet again. I hope that the next time we meet, you will have already become a true sovereign. The final words that Ziyu left echoed in Xiao Chen's mind. The feelings in Xiao Chen's heart were not enough to let others know. Could Yu Linglong be Ziyu's reincarnation? Di Shitian could not help but have this thought. This doubt kept circling in his mind, making him feel bewildered. Xiao Chen asked Ming, "You said that those ancient giants, unparalleled experts, could not be killed by heaven or buried by the earth. Their bodies died, but their souls were not destroyed. Could they really reincarnate? After reincarnating, would they still have the memories of their previous lives? Could this Yu Linglong really be the reincarnation of a heavenly monster? Is the exquisite pavilion related to Ziyu?" Xiao Chen took a deep breath and closed his eyes, calming the waves in his heart. For some reason, Xiao Chen felt that there was something wrong with this. How could the reincarnation of a heavenly monster be Yu Linglong? Impossible. Hehe. Lunatic D, I told you long ago that those ancient giants, unparalleled experts, who could cultivate to that level, were all extraordinary people. They were all unparalleled proud sons of heaven, famous people of every era. You have not reached that level, so you cannot experience that kind of power. Heaven cannot be killed by heaven or buried by the earth. Their bodies died, but their souls were not destroyed. None of them are simple. If they really had a backup plan, how could you guess it so easily? Xiao Chen looked forward to the realm that Ming mentioned. He sighed and said, "However, I once heard Master say that if such experts really reincarnate, they would definitely leave a backup plan to help them regain their past strength. Normally, they would arrange their inheritance somewhere. After reincarnating, they would rely on Su Hua to obtain the inheritance. As for the real situation, I have not seen it with my own eyes. In any case, it is not simple. If a heavenly monster wants to leave a backup plan, it is not something you can see. Fellow Taoist, look, these are the treasures you ordered. See if they are to your liking." Di Shitian used the power of the heavenly punishment divine eye to observe. He did it secretly and silently, without triggering any restrictions. Even Yuling Long did not sense it at all. Instead, at this moment, the maidservant had already brought over all the items he had mentioned. Yuling Long waved her hand and took out all the items in a storage bag. In a flash of spiritual light, several items with restrictions on the surface appeared in front of Xiao Chen's eyes. There was a magical meteorite the size of a house that had been shrunk, Heavenly Star. It was filled with rich primordial magnetic power. There was a piece of purple gold divine iron, a magical stone with 7 orifices like a human, a chaotic ball that was only the size of a fist, an ancient scroll, and other items. If you want to know more, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 426. Looking at these treasures, Di Shitian's eyes lit up. Every one of them was a treasure that attracted the attention of the whole world. They were treasures that were hard to come by. But now, they were presented in front of him one by one. It was something that he could not even dream of. Mysterious heavenly diagram, God-trapping sphere. Although there were many treasures in front of him, and none of them were ordinary, his eyes were still focused on the ancient scroll in front of him, as well as the primal chaos ball, both of which were emitting an unusual aura. He took a deep breath and explained their origins. This ancient scroll is the mysterious heavenly map, which was created by the divine Jizi with all his efforts in the ancient times. It contains tens of thousands of construction methods for immortal mansions, cities, and immortal islands. Each of them contains endless mysteries. Each of them is a rare treasure in the world. The Ling Long celestial island under our feet was built according to the construction method of a floating island in the map. It belongs to the upper middle grade among the 4 grades of high, medium, low, and supreme in the map. When Yuling Long saw that almost all of Indra's attention was placed on the ancient scroll and the god-imprisoning sphere, she also catered to his liking and commented on these 2 items. Even so, Ling Long dares to say that even if an army of 100,000 immortals came to attack, they still wouldn't be able to damage the immortal island. It's better to bury them all on the island. If you want to build an immortal mansion, you can choose one of them. I'm sure it won't disappoint you. She was very confident about the mysterious heavenly diagram. Words were no proof. Seeing was believing. Di Shitian reached out and grabbed the ancient scroll. He ran his Huangji true force and touched the ancient scroll gently. The ancient scroll flashed with spiritual light, and the restriction on it was broken easily. Swoosh! The ancient scroll slowly opened. Suddenly, a strange picture appeared in front of his eyes. There weren't many words in the scroll. Instead, it was a picture that was constantly changing. This picture wasn't an ordinary picture. It was a picture of islands that were full of charm. Each island was full of charm. It was as if it was real in front of his eyes. There were also countless beautiful immortal mansions and magnificent ancient cities flashing in front of them. If each of them were real, they would all be incomparably powerful existences. In terms of momentum, it wasn't any weaker than the Ling Long celestial island. Not to mention their imposing auras were extraordinary. Each of them had their own unique charm. Some were ethereal like the immortal realms, some were ferocious like the devil realms, and some were ordinary like valleys. Practically all sorts of scenes appeared before his eyes. These are the patterns in the heavenly secret Wanshu diagram. There are really tens of thousands of them. When Di Shitian saw this, he pondered to himself. This Tianji Wanshu diagram did not disappoint him. It was indeed a peerless treasure. As long as one's divine consciousness entered it, as long as one fancied a certain diagram, as long as one went deep into it, the overall structure of the mechanism would appear in the picture, including how to build it, how to choose the materials, how to plan it, and so on. It was extremely detailed, without the slightest error. It was a complete construction blueprint. Not to mention that there were many kinds of drawings in this ancient scroll. Even if it was only one kind, it would be a treasure that a large number of forces dreamed of. It had immeasurable benefits and was worth a fortune. There may not be tens of thousands of drawings. That was when the Tianji Wanshu diagram first appeared. However, this Tianji Wanshu diagram is very mysterious. As long as you build according to its blueprint, the blueprint will disappear in this diagram, leaving only the scene but not the specific building blueprint. Therefore, although there are tens of thousands of drawings in it now, there are not many building blueprints that are still intact. Yu Linglong didn't deceive him. She said calmly, "When you choose one, there will be one less building blueprint in this ancient scroll. From the antiquity times until now, there are not many building blueprints that are still intact in this ancient scroll. There are only about 100 or 200 of them." It was no wonder. Since the ancient times until now, across the river of time, how many experts had obtained this ancient scroll and used the blueprints in the ancient scroll to build their own immortal mansion, ancient cities, and even their own immortal island? Until now, out of tens of thousands of blueprints, it was already extremely lucky to have a few hundred of them left. It could be said that each blueprint was unique and irreplaceable. Once it was decided to take it out and use it, it would be the only one in the world. It was said that this was a restriction placed by the divine predictor himself. At the end of his life, he used his life and soul to place this restriction. Not even a peerless expert could reverse it. Even so, the heavenly secret myriad pivot diagram was still a rare treasure. The Tianji Wanshu diagrams inside were divided into different grades. This one is. D-shirt on, who had been browsing through the various blueprints, suddenly opened his eyes wide. He stared unblinkingly at the ancient scroll, as if trying to imprint the image on it into his mind. Shockingly, there was an ancient city floating in the clouds. The city had no walls, but there were 4 simple heavenly gates standing in 4 directions. The entire scene was like the king of a myriad of cities. It was majestic, imposing, simple, and majestic. A single glance at it was enough to make one want to submit to it. This was the king of countless ancient cities. It was an existence that stood at the very peak. It represented the supreme majesty of heaven and earth, and could shake the heavens and the myriad worlds and subdue countless experts. Although there were no walls, the 4 heavenly gates were like heavenly moats that couldn't be crossed. They stood there like heavenly might in the world, insurmountable. It was as if these 4 gates were enough to make the Aeon God city impregnable. South gate of heaven, west gate of heaven, north gate of heaven, and east gate of heaven. What city is this? Seeing this city, Sakura's mind couldn't help but be filled with shock. Indescribable surprise surged in his heart. No matter how he looked at this city, it was similar to the heavenly court that he had heard of in his previous life. The heavenly court that was above the 9 heavens. That southern heavenly gate was even more eye-catching. It could be said that it couldn't be more familiar. TSK Tisk, you've actually seen this city. All of a sudden, Ming exclaimed in surprise. Could it be that you know about it too? Dishirtion quickly asked. It was truly knowledgeable about ancient and modern times. There was rarely anything it didn't know. According to it, this city was extremely famous in ancient times. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that it was similar to the heavenly court in the legends. It also stood above the 9 heavens. This city is not simple. Tian Jizi spent a lot of effort to draw the outline of the city of 10,000 cities. The supreme city in the city, the supreme city. Even he couldn't think of a name for this city. However, it's indeed unprecedented. It's the emperor of the city, an irreplaceable supreme existence. Some people even said that it's a city that no one can build, because it's not the right time. It's almost impossible. Even if it's possible, the hope is extremely slim. Ming looked at the painted divine city, his eyes filled with longing. It was indeed a peerless divine city. Even peerless experts would be tempted by it. However, the problem was that it was almost impossible to build such a city. Even if there was a chance, it was extremely slim. Even the peerless experts in ancient times had not been able to complete it. They even gave up on the idea immediately. Why? The materials needed to build this city were not in the 5 elements. They could be as heavy as Mount Tai or as light as a feather. They were indestructible and indestructible. Such materials were the first problem that had to be faced. It wasn't that there weren't any materials that weren't part of the five elements in this world. For example, stellar essence was one of them. But the problem was that materials that weren't part of the five elements were incomparably precious and rare treasures. Even if one had a small portion, even if one possessed remarkable abilities, a small portion wouldn't be enough to build an Aeon God City. Without a doubt, it would be like pouring a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. Just this alone was enough to make countless peerless geniuses give up on the number one divine city in ancient times. Putting everything else aside, the four heavenly gates were not ordinary objects. They were the real heavenly gates. There were a total of 4 gates: east, west, north, and south. If they were placed according to the 4 directions at the same time, they could imprison a part of the world. If they were placed in the 4 directions of the divine city, they could completely replace the city walls and guard the divine city. This was because once the 4 gates were combined into one, even the most powerful expert would have to pass through one of the 4 gates in order to enter or exit. Only the gates of heaven could enter and exit. As for the other gates, even if they looked empty, they would still be unable to pass through them. This kind of power was magical. What are the 4 heavenly gates? The more Sakura listened to Ming's explanation, the more astounded he felt, and his heart surged with tempestuous waves. He acutely noticed that the 4 heaven entrances seemed to be the most critical and important part of the heaven entrance. He vaguely felt that the 4 heavenly gates were definitely inestimable treasures. Those are top, innate spiritual treasures. You should know that when the land of origin was just born, a large number of innate spiritual treasures from the chaos landed on the continent. They either hid themselves or chose their own masters. However, top innate spiritual treasures are very rare. Moreover, each of the 4 heavenly gates is a top innate spiritual treasure. When the 4 of them are combined, they are a set of supreme treasures formed by 4 top innate spiritual treasures. Now, you know how difficult it is to build this divine city. Invincible, simply invincible. Di Shirtian murmured without hesitation. Heavens, how powerful would it be to have 4 top innate spiritual treasures as the city gates? It would really be invincible. Even a peerless expert would be helpless and leave dejectedly upon seeing such a scene. It was simply an unbreakable tortoise shell. I heard that Tianjizi, that old guy, specially designed such an almost impossible divine city because he heard about the 4 heavenly gates. Until now, no one has been able to do it. Crazy D, don't tell me you want to build this divine city. Ming had observed Di Shirtian's temperament very carefully during this period of time. Now that he saw him staring unblinkingly at this peerless ancient city, he immediately understood that he must be thinking about this divine city. He hurriedly shouted, wanting to dispel his thoughts, because it was really too difficult. Why not? Di Shirtian's eyes narrowed as he said gravely, "Don't go crazy. Do you know that the 4 heavenly gates are hidden in one of the 9 great forbidden lands, the Heavenly Gates Forbidden Land? It's not that no one in the ancient times didn't have any ideas about them, but all of them were buried inside. Those who were lucky enough to escape never dared to enter again. Don't think about going in and throwing your life away. I still need you to help me find the Book of Underworld." Phew. After a long while, he exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and slowly retracted his gaze from the ancient scroll. However, his heart was not calm. While he was reading, he was also madly deducing in his mind. The result of his deductions was that it was not impossible to build the ancient god city. First of all, it was not difficult for him to find building materials that were beyond the 5 elements because he had divine crystals. Divine crystals were unique material that was refined by combining the power of faith and various materials. It was a magical material that was beyond the 5 elements. Moreover, divine crystals could be mass-produced, as long as the power of faith was not extinguished. A large number of divine crystals would not be a problem. At this time, China had already declared war on the surrounding countries to expand their territory. When the time came, the population would increase and the faith would increase. The power of faith would be even greater in the future. Moreover, it would have endless potential. Therefore, the materials to build a divine city were not a problem for him at all. It was not impossible to build a divine city. The key was the 4 heavenly gates. Every single one of the 9 great forbidden grounds on the purple gold continent was filled with immeasurable danger. A forbidden ground that could hide 4 gates of heaven. One could easily imagine how dangerous it was. If one really went in, it would be considered a light death. One could die in there at any time. Of course, other than the heavenly gates, the divine city also needed a large number of incomparably precious treasures. Fellow cultivator, what do you think of this Tianji Wanshu illustration? Yu Linglong did not disturb his observation. When Di Shitian came back to his senses, she asked with a faint smile, "Okay, I want this Wanshu illustration." Di Shitian said in a deep voice, "I want all the other items here too. I don't know how much they are worth." 23 billion. Yu Linglong softly spat out a shocking price. More than 20 billion. God, this price, if someone else was here, they would probably faint on the spot. This was not a price that an ordinary cultivator could take out. Even a small fraction of this price would make them unable to pay it back in their lifetime. Even a large sect would be shocked to the point of dizziness. Even if they took out all their savings, they might not be able to afford it. Most likely, only the 4 holy lands would barely be able to take out such a sum of money. But even then, they would have to spend thousands of years of their savings in one go. This number was simply too large, so large that it was terrifying. 23 billion. At this moment, even Di Shitian could not help but frown. He was a little surprised. That's right. This Tianji Wanshu illustration is worth an astronomical price. In addition, the god-trapping sphere was taken out from the forbidden land of the 9 great forbidden lands. It even has the 9 heavens, 10 earths, god, slaying demon, slaying seal in it. Its value is immeasurable. Also, these heavenly stars, meteorites, and so on are the most precious items in this auction. Each of them is a rare treasure that is hard to find in the world. Moreover, we are now doing a private transaction. Each item will be sold to you at the lowest price. 23 billion is already the limit that Linglong Pavilion can reduce to. Yu Linglong was not in a hurry to lie. She did not feel any heartache for these losses. Indeed, what she said was absolutely true. If the treasures inside were really taken out to auction, they could easily be sold for 2 or 3 times the price. If it wasn't for the seed of life in Sakura's hands, which was also a peerless treasure, there was no reason for the price to be so low. All right, since Fairy Linglong says so, I won't be unreasonable. 23 billion. I'll take it. Di Shitian lowered his eyes and pondered for a moment. Then he made up his mind. Using what he could not use to exchange for what he urgently needed, both sides would get what they needed. This transaction was not a loss for either side. Moreover, just based on the divine diagram in the heavenly secret myriad pivot diagram, no matter how great the price, he had to get it no matter what. A light flashed in Yu Linglong's eyes. However, her heart was not calm at all. Waves were surging in her heart. As expected, he has a large number of source of life. Where did he get them from? Did he encounter the divine tree of life? Or did he encounter the legendary corpse-devouring flower in the Tower of Babel? These were the only 2 ways to get source of life. However, the corpse-devouring flower in the Tower of Babel was always mysterious and good at hiding. It was impossible to find them. Their numbers were even rarer. While she was pondering in her heart, Di Shitian waved his hand and took out another jade box. He put 230 source of life in the jade box. According to the price of 1 source of life, each source of life was worth 100 million, which was enough to make up for the 23 billion spiritual stones. After Yu Linglong carefully counted them, she carefully stored them away. Similarly, Sakura also stored those treasures into his storage ring. The transaction was completed. No matter if it was Yu Linglong or Sakura, both of them heaved a sigh of relief from the bottom of their hearts. This transaction had an irreplaceable effect on both sides. Yu Linglong stood up naturally and said gently, "Brother Chun, Madam Chun, the source of life is very important. Please forgive Linglong for my rudeness. There are still many precious treasures in the auction. In the later stages, There will be some mysterious cultivation techniques up for auction. If the two of you are interested, you might be able to find something you like." After she finished speaking, she bowed again and turned to leave. She walked directly to the higher levels of Ling Long Pavilion. Hundreds of source of life. Only God knew how excited Ling Long was with this shocking amount of wealth. Compared to other treasures, this was a treasure that was hard to come by even with money. Every single one of them had the potential to create a powerhouse. A powerhouse with an inner world. Actually, in Di Shitian's opinion, this was just both sides taking what they needed. There was no difference between who would lose and who would profit. They both got what they wanted. Take the mysterious heavenly diagram, for example. To him, it was worth it no matter how high the price was. It was just a matter of their values. In Di Shitian's mind, the shadow of the ancient god city kept circling around. It's the end of the month. Please support me if you have tickets. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chijian.com. I support the author. I support the original reading. Chapter 427. Ming, it seems like we have already attracted other people's attention this time. Paper can't wrap fire. Once other people know that I have so many rare treasures with me, they will immediately be surrounded by a large group of evil wolves. They may attack us at any time to take a bite out of us. Ling Long Pavilion. We can't stay in this auction any longer. The longer we stay, the more dangerous it will be. Di Shitian kept thinking. Since Ling Long left, he had been thinking about what to do in the future. This transaction was really too big, so big that it was frightening. Taking out more than 200 source seeds of life in one go was really too eye-catching. With the Ling Long Pavilion's ability, it was impossible that they wouldn't notice him. He was afraid that someone was watching him right now. It wasn't hard to think about it, and it was human nature. Now, he could even guess what other people were thinking. Since he could take out more than 200 source seeds of life in one go, did it mean that he had more source seeds of life in one go? This kind of thinking gave rise to greed. Di Shitian was never one to entrust his safety to others. He just closed his eyes for a while, then opened them again. He looked at Bai Hu and said, "Tian Xiang, we can't stay in the Ling Long Pavilion any longer. The things I bought here are enough to attract many people's attention. If we continue to stay here after the auction is over and we leave Ling Long Immortal Island, we will probably be attacked and killed. Let's go. We will leave now." After he finished speaking, he waved his hand. A faintly discernible illusory air suddenly rushed out of his body and covered the whole VIP room. It completely covered everything inside. Regardless of whether it was the divine consciousness, the naked eye, or even some rare treasures that could observe this place from a distance, none of them could see what was going on inside. We really can't stay here any longer. This matter is definitely not small. Fortunately, we have the mirage illusory air to cover our bodies and disguise ourselves. Otherwise, we would definitely be in big trouble in the future. The white fox's eyes that were filled with intelligence flickered with a wisp of strange brilliance. The corners of its mouth revealed a trace of craftiness and a wisp of playfulness as it said, "Shitian, I feel that we can deliberately set up a formation to confuse the public and divert the attention of others away from us." A fox was indeed a fox. She was quick-witted and intelligent. In the blink of an eye, she came up with a plan. With Mirage's illusory air as a barrier, he could plan boldly, but after a while, he left. Leave the VIP room. Leave Ling Long Pavilion. As soon as they left the Ling Long Pavilion, they found that someone was following them closely with their divine sense. This wasn't unexpected. After leaving the Immortal Island, Dark immediately used its ability to hide them. At the same time, a green orchid-like spirit leaf fell into each of their hands. They spat it out without hesitation. Immediately after consuming the spirit leaf, a mysterious cold chi rose up from within his body. It passed through his flesh and blood, filling his entire body in an instant. Then his entire body, from top to bottom, completely disappeared in an instant. It was as if the weight of his entire body had completely disappeared in an instant. His entire body was like air, weightless. With just a thought, he could float up. What a magical spirit leaf. I heard that when you made a bet with the Princess of Dragon Palace on the Smoky Wave Island, you used an unknown, mysterious method to make your body invisible. No matter how she used all kinds of divine sense and secret methods, she couldn't find you. I think you did it with this kind of spirit essence. Baihu witnessed her body disappear like an illusion in an instant. Her entire body seemed to have become nothingness, as if it didn't exist in the world. It was very magical. This is the illusory spirit leaf. After consuming it, your body will turn into nothingness in an instant. In this state, it's even better than being invisible. Even immortals and Buddhas can't find it or feel it. Although it only lasts for 15 minutes, it's the best life-saving trump card if used well. Di Shirtian nodded and said in a deep voice, "Let's act according to the plan now. After the auction is over, you leave with Rock Demon King and others, and I will return to Southern Barbarian." "Okay." Baihu smiled slyly and said, "Shirtian, don't forget that we had an agreement in Southern Barbarian. Don't forget the Qingqiu Mountain Agreement. If you don't come that day, don't blame Tianxiang for hating you for a lifetime. I will never forgive you." After that, she waved her long sleeves gently and turned around to walk into the Pavilion of Delicacy again. With the magical power of the illusory spirit grass, after coming out of the Pavilion of Delicacy, she entered again silently. However, this time, she didn't enter the room where she stayed with Di Shirtian, but the VIP room where Rock Demon King and others were. No one noticed that there was one more person in the room. Although Silver Hair and others were puzzled, they didn't ask more. Di Shirtian didn't immediately leave this ice and snow area with the help of the illusory spirit grass. He turned around and walked into the Tower of Babel without hesitation. He entered the tower again. Impossible. How could they disappear without a trace under my surveillance? Could it be that they're not mortals, but immortals from the heavenly realm? No, I have to report to the Tower Master immediately. After Di Shirtian and Bai, who took the illusory spirit grass and turned their bodies into nothingness and disappeared without a trace, they quickly left according to the plan. In the sky above that area, a man in green appeared out of thin air without any warning. His strength was so high that no one could tell how strong he was. It turned out that he was an expert following them. A tyrannical divine sense shot out from his body and scanned the surroundings inch by inch, just like Li Tian, before he finally gave up and left. Just like when he first appeared, the green figure mysteriously disappeared. The next moment, 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, there was still no abnormal movement in the surroundings. In the air, the man in green appeared again. He frowned slightly and looked a little pale. They are really not here. Then he gave up and returned to Ling Long, Celestial Island. As expected, the higher one's cultivation was, the more cunning one's mind would be. None of them were innocent. He wanted to trick Di Shirtian here, but he didn't expect that Di Shirtian had already turned around and entered the Tower of Babel. This trick is called darkness under the light. Even if others are as cunning as foxes, they can't guess my identity. Who would have thought that I would enter the Tower of Babel alone instead of leaving? Di Shirtian entered the tower and felt the space around him change. When he looked again, he found himself in the sky above a vast sea area. The blue sea water was surging. Fish jumped out of the sea. Those fish were fierce. Their mouths were full of sharp teeth, shining with cold light. Their mouths were several times bigger than their bodies. They were piranhas. There were many islands around. Some of the islands were full of vitality, while some were desolate and lifeless. Some were big, some were small. They were standing on the sea. They found an island that was covered by trees and landed on it. Splash! Just as he landed, a lizard whose entire body was covered in scales suddenly scuttled out from the forest. It was ferocious and terrifying, and its tail, which was covered in scales, ferociously whipped towards Sakura's waist with the force of 1,000 caddies. The great force made the air around them oppressive and made sonic booms. It was as fast as lightning. Almost instantly, he appeared behind Di Shirtian, leaning sideways. Di Shirtian seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. He suddenly reached out his hands and caught the lizard's tail in the air. He grabbed it. His 10 fingers were like hooks, shining with a metallic luster. They were sharper than sharp blades. They broke the scales directly and stabbed into the flesh. Suddenly, blood burst out. He grabbed the lizard's tail and snorted. The muscles on his arms were surging like dragons. He was a second transformation demon core expert, and an expert who walked the ancient path of demon cultivation. Just the strength of his flesh and blood was more than 10,000 caddies. He grabbed the lizard tail, his eyes cold and his black hair wild behind his head. He looked like a demonic god. Bang, bang, bang. The lizard spun and slammed crazily into the towering ancient trees in the surroundings, breaking a large number of ancient trees and smashing them to the ground. Terrifying cracks appeared on the ground like a spider web, densely spreading in all directions. Terrifying, fierce, almost like a demon god. It was as if he was not holding a savage beast in his hand, but a terrifying savage beast with endless brute force. A fierce lizard was smashed into meat paste by him. He chopped some branches, set up a firewood, and put the lizard on the fire to barbecue. The barbecued skin was peeled off, and the meat was golden. Then he gobbled it up in big bites. In just one meal, he had swallowed a huge lizard that was at least 30 meters long. His appetite was really shocking. Crazy D, are you planning to go into seclusion in the Tower of Babel? Could it be that you want to break through the checkpoint in one go? Go through the 3-9 demonic tribulations and enter the third transformation of your monster core? Dark suddenly asked after watching him finish eating. After the cleansing of the huge amount of essence chi in the blood altar, the Huangji true force in my body has reached the limit of the second transformation on my monster core. If I don't break through, it will be difficult for me to improve. Moreover, you know my current situation. It's fine if I don't expose myself. But once I do, I don't know how many people want me dead. This prince does not wish to rely on others. Only by relying on oneself and continuously becoming stronger can I continue to stand tall and not fall. Breaking through is a must, Sakura said with unusual firmness. He was very clear about the environment he was in a situation where he didn't have any ability to obtain treasures that were far more valuable than what he could have now. In a word, that was putting himself on the fire to roast. If he didn't want to die, he could only become stronger to the extent that he could ignore those flames. Strong enough to plant a golden lotus in the fire. But if he wanted to go into seclusion and make a breakthrough, he couldn't think of any place better than Sky Split Tower. Here, not only could he avoid the attention of those outside, he could also have a quiet place to cultivate without being disturbed. Sky Split Tower, one of the 9 great forbidden zones, was the best place for him to go. Good, good, good. You have to break through. Your realm is not a problem. You cultivate the Emperor's Tao. After the fight in the Pavilion of Delicacy, your intent realm has increased greatly. However, you have to be careful of your desire when breaking through. In the realm of desire, you have to rely on your own temperament. If anything goes wrong, you will be consigned to eternal damnation. As long as you successfully break through to the third transformation of Monster Core, with the huge amount of essence chi left in your body by the blood altar, the exquisite pagoda's ability to reverse time and space, and a large amount of spirit wine, you can absorb the endless power of desire that is everywhere in the world. With the rich spiritual chi of heaven and earth, you will be able to reach the peak of the third transformation in no time and touch the threshold of the ancient demon king. The stronger D Shirtion was, the happier it was. This also meant that it had a higher chance of getting the Book of Underworld. Just like before, in a hidden place, he found a towering ancient tree and dug a hole in the tree. He placed the exquisite pagoda inside and shrunk it to the size of a speck of dust that could not be seen with the naked eye. Then, he threw himself into the pagoda. The first transformation could only reverse time 10 times compared to the outside world. The second transformation could reverse time and space 50 times. It was a shocking 1:50 ratio. A day in the outside world would be more than 2 months inside. A year in the outside world would be 50 years inside. This time, he decided to cultivate in seclusion for a year. This year was the time in the outside world. In other words, as long as he was in the second transformation, it would be 50 years. After entering the second level, he found himself in the same lush green grassland. Then he sat down on the ground. Spiritual light flashed from his storage ring, and he saw a stone with 7 orifices floating in front of him. It was surrounded by a 7-colored halo and looked just like a human. 7 orifices, exquisite stone. Legend had it that in this world, there was a type of person with a miraculous physique. The heart in their body was not an ordinary heart, but the 7 orifices' exquisite heart. If a mortal had this heart, then in the mortal world, they would be loyal and courageous, and their name would go down in history. An extremely powerful official. It was the kind of existence that was second only to one person and above millions of people. And if one had the physique of an immortal cultivator and cultivated, they would be a peerless genius that was rarely seen in 10,000 years. Within 1,000 years, they would definitely reach the immortal realm and become a peerless genius. However, no matter which one it was, after they died, the 7 orifices' exquisite heart in their body would absorb all their essence, chi, and strength into the exquisite heart. And the 7 orifices' exquisite heart would slowly turn into a stone. This was the origin of the 7 orifices' exquisite stone. What was even more magical was that it could continuously absorb the power of heaven and earth, making itself stronger and bigger. No matter where it was placed, it was a rare material for refining weapons in the world. It was hard and difficult to destroy. The one in front of him was in the shape of a heart, but its size was twice that of an ordinary heart. Its entire body was surrounded by 7-colored divine light. It was impossible for it to grow to such a size without thousands or even tens of thousands of years. Then, a box of stellar essence was taken out. Even the divine meteorite metal was taken out and placed in front of him. Although A.O. Chun had bought a box of stellar essence, Ling Long Pavilion had a deep foundation after all. When they saw that it was on the list that Di Shirtian pointed out, they took out another box without hesitation. These 3 materials were all rare treasures in the world. Lunatic D, why are you taking these things out instead of going into seclusion? Could it be that you want to refine some treasure? Dark said with a hint of surprise. These were all materials for refining weapons, and each of them was extraordinary. They were all treasures that he had bought before. It thought about it and said in surprise, could it be that you want to refine the soul refining pot that you mentioned before? The soul refining pot. That was the mysterious jade slip that said that it could smelt all kinds of materials in heaven and earth together with the power of faith into a unique divine crystal. It was not in the 3 realms or the 5 elements. It could be said to be the pinnacle of the fusion of the immortal path and the divine path. And the key was to refine the soul refining pot. If not for the fact that the soul refining pot required extraordinary materials, he would have already started refining it. That's right, the soul refining pot. It's time to refine it. Even if I can't absorb the power of faith to increase my cultivation, I must use it to refine the divine crystal. Di Shirtian's eyes glittered as if they could see through everything. There was an extremely firm determination in them. The peerless divine city in his mind hadn't disappeared until now. Using a set of 4 top-grade innate spirit treasures as the city walls, using the innate spirit treasure cloud-gathering banner to gather tens of thousands of auspicious clouds to support the divine city, soaring above the 9 heavens, using materials that were not part of the 5 elements as the foundation of the city, and using the 5-color divine soil as the mud to build the divine city, absorbing countless restrictive formations, transcending the 5 elements, and standing above the heavens. It could be said to be the Aeon God City that had never existed before. He felt his blood boiling just by looking at it. There was only one thought in his mind, which was to refine it at all costs. Either he didn't refine it at all, or he would refine it into a supreme city like this. Therefore, the soul refining pot had almost reached the point where he had to refine it. Seclusion? Refining the soul refining pot was the most important thing that he had to do in seclusion. With the 7 orifices, exquisite stone as the main body, the star essence gold, the meteorite divine iron, and the power of faith as the furnace fire, the soul refining pot that was refined would definitely be a rare treasure. The power of faith from incense, with my blood as the medium, turn into the divine fire and refine all things. Chi. Di closed his eyes and meditated. He adjusted his mind to the best state. After calming down completely, a solemn expression appeared on his face. He stretched out his index finger, and a drop of dark red blood essence was forced out by the royal true force. It was sparkling and translucent like a gem. After cultivating until now, his flesh, blood, bone marrow, and demon veins had all been cleansed time and time again. He was constantly moving in the direction of the indestructible body. Even the blood in his body had been changed several times. Every time it was cleansed, the demon blood in his body would become purer and more free of impurities. Even the blood contained an extremely large amount of energy. Once he reached the indestructible body, even if there was only a drop of blood left, he could be reborn again. The indestructible body was not something that could be achieved in a day. It was just like this continuously transforming time and time again. This drop of blood essence flew in front of him, and immediately, the power of faith from the incense that was transmitted from the underworld immediately poured into it. Puff! With a sound, the drop of blood seemed to be boiling. With a soft sound, it suddenly turned into a wisp of golden flame that was as thin as smoke. It was abnormally weak. It swayed with the wind as if it would be extinguished at any time. This is the divine fire recorded in the mysterious jade slip that can be used to refine a divine artifact. I can't let it go out. Di Tian's expression became more and more calm. He carefully poured wisps of power of faith into the divine fire as fuel to strengthen the divine fire. It's going to be a new month soon. If you have a guaranteed monthly vote, please help me cast a few votes and rush up the rankings. In the new month, I will also be full of energy and shine with my passion. For the construction of the ancient god city, I invite all brothers to contribute together. Also, I would like to thank the poet for secretly helping me advertise everywhere. Thank you. Chapter 428. Splurt. The divine fire used the power of faith as nutrients, and it was the fundamental fire of a cultivator of the path of godhood. Although Sakura didn't cultivate the path of godhood and didn't have any divine power in his body, the method of using his blood essence as a medium wasn't lacking in the slightest. From the void, he extracted the power of faith that was connected to him and poured it into the divine fire. The god flame, which had been on the verge of going out at any moment, seemed to have eaten some sort of tonic pill and was visibly growing stronger. The size of a sesame seed, the size of a grain of rice, the size of a soybean. As the incense and power of faith poured into it, the god flame grew stronger and stronger. A moment later, it was the size of a soccer ball. The golden flame floated in the air, emanating a holy and inviolable aura. It was like the might of the heavens, like a god's domain. Anyone who saw it couldn't help but feel a sense of awe and veneration. Everything in the area was bathed in golden light. Although there didn't seem to be any heat spreading out, there seemed to be an extremely terrifying power contained within the flames. When it erupted, it could incinerate everything in the surroundings into ashes. It could completely turn everything into nothingness in the divine flames. So this is the god flame cultivated by the Tao of Godhood, Di Tian said. It's completely different from the Samadhi, true fire, cultivated by cultivators, or even the demon fire, the demon folk. I can sense the incredible power contained in this god flame. No wonder there were 3 holy emperors in the human race at the end of the ancient era. Each one of them was as powerful as the most powerful experts in the world, and most likely cultivated the Tao of Godhood. It's too bad I didn't get to see it with my own eyes before I was sucked into this damnable god eye. Di Tian looked at the god flame, floating in the air, in surprise. Although the ancient era was dominated by the demon folk, and the human race was nothing more than a vassal. The Tao of Godhood was a cultivation method developed by the human race for the first time. It relied on the power of faith from incense and faith to cultivate the Tao of Godhood and God power. Once the power of faith was gathered, one could transcend and become a god. The Tao of Godhood was born at the end of the ancient era. At that time, the world was in complete chaos and war was raging. Not many experts cared about such things. However, by relying on the power of will and cultivating the Tao of Godhood, three sage emperors had emerged. They were the heavenly emperor, the earthly emperor, and the human emperor. It was said that they were the strongest cultivators at the peak of the divine Tao, and their battle prowess was comparable to unparalleled powerhouses. It was only after ancient times that the divine Tao truly flourished for a period of time. Unfortunately, the human race loved infighting, and this was applicable at all times. Due to the difference in system between the immortal Tao and the divine Tao, it was inevitable that fierce battles would erupt. There was a small fight every 3 days and a big fight every 5 days. They fought until the heavens fell and the earth cracked, and the sun and moon lost their light. You destroyed my temple and statue, so I'll smash your sect. This period of history was the Middle Ages. The result of the battle was very obvious. The divine path cultivators were defeated. In the end, under the leadership of the three saint emperors, they retreated from the purple gold continent and left the land of origin. Once the divine Tao declined, it began to disappear from the world. Up until now, he had only heard of the divine path. It was obvious that there were some superficial methods to condense the power of faith, but he could not cultivate it to any great extent. The divine path naturally disappeared without a trace. Up until now, there was not a single person who cultivated the divine path. This was also the reason why no one paid too much attention to Tirtian when he condensed the power of faith. Now, he was able to condense the divine fire. It cannot be said that it was a rather unbelievable thing. Rise! Tirtian carefully focused and gently pointed at the seven-colored exquisite stone. Immediately, the exquisite stone flew into the air and appeared on top of the divine fire. Streaks of golden flames immediately began to burn. However, the exquisite stone was incomparably hard. Even the divine fire could not easily smelt it. This stone was already comparable to an indestructible body. However, he did not intend to completely smelt it. He only controlled the divine fire and continuously poured the power of faith into the divine fire. Under the burning of the divine fire, it turned into wisps of pure divine power and turned into wisps of flames. They followed the divine stone's 7 orifices and continuously seeped into the exquisite stone. Wisps after wisps, they continued to flow endlessly. This was a method recorded in the mysterious jade slip to use divine power to smelt divine artifacts. He continued to use the divine power as a medium to smelt and seep into the 7 orifices exquisite stone. This incense and wish power was his. Even if it turned into divine power, it still had an extremely mysterious connection with him. He could still control it. When the exquisite stone was filled with divine power, he could use the connection between the divine power and himself to form a unique connection with the 7 orifices exquisite stone. He could refine it like a magic treasure. After that, no matter how hard the exquisite stone was, he could still transform it into any shape with his will. He also had to use divine power to condense a magical divine array inside when he smelted it. That divine array was called the Devouring the Heavens and Earth Divine Refining Array. The reason why the divine refining pot could devour any material and fuse it with the power of faith to produce a unique divine crystal was because of this divine array. Without the divine array, it naturally wouldn't have that kind of miraculous ability. However, this refining process wasn't something that could be done in a day or two, or 3 months. It had to be persevered. He continued to smelt divine power into it. Swoosh! Under his control, the divine flame stabilized, and strands of divine energy seeped into his body through his 7 orifices. At this moment, he waved his hand again, and half of the stellar gold essence appeared in the air. The stellar gold essence was as fine as golden sand, and it turned into a streak of starry rainbow that landed above the divine flame. It approached the exquisite stone. This star essence gold was not as tough as the 7 orifices exquisite stone. Under the burning of the divine fire, it was clearly melting slowly. It melted into droplets of liquid that resembled stars, and the liquid turned into wisps of starry divine light. Like divine power, they surged into the exquisite stone through the 7 orifices. The fusion of the starry divine light caused the exquisite stone to have more starlight. It seemed to contain the power of the stars and was extremely gorgeous. Since he couldn't smelt it, he would use the exquisite stone as a furnace and smelt other materials into the exquisite stone. At that time, he would be able to refine it into a divine stone that fused with the stellar essence and the divine iron of the meteorite. Its magical effects would definitely be even more miraculous than before. Once the refinement was successful, it would also be a rare treasure. Time continued to pass in this silence. 1 year, 2 years, in the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. During these 10 years, Tion didn't let down his guard for a moment. He kept his attention on the divine fire and the exquisite stone in front of him. In the 3rd year of the smelting, the stellar essence had all turned into the power of the stars and merged into it. In the next 6 years, the divine iron of the meteorite was cut in half and completely melted into it. For 10 years in a row, there was a huge amount of incense and power being poured into the divine fire every day. The amount was so huge that even Tion felt a little pained. Fortunately, there were hundreds of millions of people in China behind him. The incense continued. That was why he was able to hold on until now. 10 years was like a day. Every day, he had to condense the divine power into divine seals in the exquisite stone and distribute them everywhere, constantly perfecting the devouring the heavens and earth divine refining array. Devouring the heavens and earth, refining the divine array, gathering the 7 orifices, refining into a pot. On the grassland, Tion was dressed in a black robe. His eyes were slightly closed, and a golden divine flame was burning fiercely in front of him. As for the exquisite stone, it was enveloped by a dense divine light. 7-colored light burst forth, and specks of starlight surrounded it. It was so gorgeous that it was like the most beautiful item in the world. Plop, plop. The moment the divine array was completed, the exquisite stone seemed to have suddenly gained life. It actually rose and fell like a living heart, beating violently. Every time it beat, the surrounding space actually trembled. Even Tion could feel that the rhythm of his heartbeat was actually close to that of the exquisite stone. It became the same rhythm. It started to beat, and the amplitude was abnormally strong, as if it was going to jump out of his chest. Even his body seemed to have lost control. There was great terror between life and death. He was afraid that he could not control himself. He was afraid that he could not control himself. What a terrifying, exquisite heart. Tion hurriedly activated the Emperor's shocking world book and chanted the Emperor's tyrant heart mantra in his heart. He allowed himself to be in a state of mind where the heavens and earth were supreme, the Emperor of all living beings, and the heavens and earth revolved around him. Only then did he abandon that terrifying feeling. Then, without stopping, he immediately used his mind to enter the exquisite stone. Relying on his connection with it, he began to drive it to change. Immediately, he saw that the heart-like exquisite stone was beating as if it had a life of its own. It devoured the surrounding power of heaven and earth, as well as a huge amount of incense and willpower. At the same time, its shape was constantly changing. On one side of the heart, a pot mouth slowly appeared and extended outwards. On the other side, a pot handle appeared. It was like a tea set used to drink tea. Its entire body was surrounded by a seven-colored halo, and bits of starlight covered its body. There were 7 orifices around it, and they were still rising and falling. They were using the 7 orifices to devour the vast amount of power of heaven and earth and incense, and will power outside. The inside was hollow, but there was no pot lid. It was a complete body, and it was very mysterious and gorgeous. The divine power condensed, and a divine array formed by countless divine seals flashed out from the pot. Plop! A vast divine might burst out from the divine pot. With a jump, the space around the pot seemed to be unable to withstand it and collapsed inward. The destructive power that erupted when it collapsed was immediately swallowed by the 7 orifices on the divine pot before it could wreak havoc. Rumble! Suddenly, above his head, an incomparably terrifying heavenly might emitted a vast pressure that covered the sky and earth. Looking up, an incomparably huge, 5-colored tribulation cloud condensed out of thin air. In the tribulation cloud, the pressure emitted by the heavenly tribulation was so terrifying that even D. Shurtion felt suffocated. It was as if there were countless mountains pressing down on him. Lunatic D, quick, run! This is a 5-colored tribulation cloud. It contains the terrifying power of the 5 elements. It must be the greater 5-element tribulation. The divine pot you refined can actually draw out the weapon tribulation. It must be a treasure. Only precious treasures could trigger heavenly tribulations. You can't help me with this artifact tribulation. It has to be resisted by the artifact itself. Nether roared madly in his mind. It's a new month. Brothers with votes, please cast your guaranteed monthly votes for the 1,000 demons. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 429. Heaven and earth had its own laws. When a person cultivated to a certain level, he would be above all things in the world. He could easily destroy a large number of lives with a wave of his hand. He could easily destroy mountains and seas. This kind of power had already violated the laws of heaven and earth. Heaven and earth would not allow you to cause harm to it. At this time, a heavenly tribulation would descend. Once the heavenly tribulation appeared, it would destroy the life that threatened all things in the world and make him return his power to all things in the world. If he couldn't pass it, he would naturally die. Generally speaking, as long as his cultivation was slightly weaker, his soul might be destroyed. If he didn't, he could only cultivate as an itinerant immortal. His physical body would definitely be destroyed, or he could reincarnate and cultivate again. Each of them could be said to be miserable. If he could pass it, he would be able to transcend heaven and earth and be recognized by heaven and earth. Therefore, every time a human cultivator reached the heavenly tribulation level, he would face a heavenly tribulation. Demons went against heaven's will and faced many tribulations. With every step, there would be a heavenly tribulation to kill them. Compared to humans, it was 100 or 1,000 times more difficult to achieve. Humans had heavenly tribulations, and demons had demonic tribulations. Artifacts and Dharma treasures also had weapon tribulations. The principle was the same. Because the artifact that appeared had already touched upon a certain height, it attracted the jealousy of the heavens and earth, not allowing it to be born. Thus, the artifact tribulation would descend to destroy it, not allowing it to appear in the world. If it couldn't pass the tribulation, it would naturally be crushed into dust by the heavenly tribulation, completely destroyed. If it passed the tribulation, it would be acknowledged by the heavens and earth. Heaven and earth would recognize its existence. Now that the great 5 elements heavenly tribulation had condensed in the sky, it was obvious that the newly refined smelting God pot had touched the limits of heaven and earth. The heavenly tribulation would descend to destroy the smelting God pot. This weapon tribulation was a kind of weapon tribulation that no outsiders could help. It could only be supported and resisted by the smelting god pot itself. This great five elements heavenly tribulation is stronger than any I've encountered before. With my current state, unless I use the heavenly punishment divine I will definitely be killed by the heavenly tribulation. Di Shirtion didn't need Ming's reminder. He turned around and retreated a few hundred feet to escape the range of the heavenly tribulation. His expression changed slightly, and his eyes fell on the smelting god pot that was still suspended in the air. There was no lack of nervousness in his heart. He wondered if the power of the god refining pot could withstand the bombardment of the heavenly tribulation. He was the one who refined the pot, so he knew best what was going on. This pot was not an offensive magical treasure at all. It was just an artifact used to refine divine crystals. It was just a furnace. It had no offensive power and could not attack the enemy directly. It was an unconventional treasure. Crack! The five-colored tribulation cloud in the sky churned violently. Before it could gather its power, a scarlet tribulation lightning filled with violent flames and a terrifying destructive aura shot towards the divine pot, shattering the surrounding space inch by inch. A vast and terrifying aura erupted from the tribulation lightning. Bang! The smelting god, pot, didn't even try to dodge the destructive tribulation lightning. It remained where it was, allowing the tribulation lightning to strike it. Immediately, countless crimson bolts of lightning erupted in all directions, instantly blasting the surrounding space into powder and obliterating it inch by inch. It was a terrifying scene of great destruction. The earth, fire, water, and wind rampaged in all directions, causing the grass within a radius of 1,000 feet to collapse on the spot. Countless cracks that looked like spider webs appeared on the surface of the ground. Plop! However, the divine pot did not shatter under the pure destructive tribulation lightning. It did not even sink into the ground. Instead, it continued to float in the air. Divine light surrounded the pot. Its 7 orifices breathed in and out, and it still pulsed as if it had a life of its own. Immediately, the pot's 7 orifices gave off a terrifying devouring power that could devour everything without any warning. The tribulation lightning that landed on the pot turned into strands of lightning under this strange devouring power. They flowed into the pot's 7 orifices and were all devoured by the divine pot, like a whale sucking in water. In the blink of an eye, all the lightning in the surroundings disappeared. On the contrary, the 7-colored halo emitted by the pot became even brighter and denser, devouring the heavens and earth. This pot is so powerful. It can even devour tribulation lightning. Treasure. That tribulation lightning, just now, could even turn a mountain thousands of feet high into powder, but it was devoured just like that. Could this pot, formed by the combination of the immortal path and the divine path, be so magical? Nether was sitting in the nether prison, watching the situation outside. When he saw what was happening, he was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. That pot had actually devoured the tribulation lightning. That devouring the heavens and earth divine formation is indeed magical. It can devour everything, even the heavenly tribulation. Sakura's eyes instantly became abnormally bright as they flickered with radiance. He instantly realized the preciousness of the divine pot. As expected, it had the ability to devour everything and refine divine crystals as mentioned in the mysterious jade slip. With such a powerful ability, even if it didn't have any offensive power, it could still make it extremely difficult to destroy. If it was used to refine divine crystals, there was no need to worry about it not being able to withstand and breaking. Countless lightning bolts shuttled back and forth in the tribulation clouds, as if they had consciousness. When they saw the tribulation lightning being devoured, they immediately rolled violently. Then, with a boom, another golden tribulation lightning bolt, several times thicker than the one before, broke through the void and blasted the pot. The tribulation lightning contained boundless sharpness that tore through space. Thump! However, the 7 orifices divine pot continued to pulsate in a relaxed manner. An even more terrifying, devouring force burst forth from the pot and swallowed the tribulation lightning back into the pot. The tribulation lightning seemed to have been absorbed by the pot. The divine light on the pot's surface became even brighter and more resplendent. One could clearly see that its divine might have become even more powerful, using the tribulation lightning to refine the body and strengthen the body. This divine pot was truly magical. Bang, bang, bang. Countless tribulation lightning bolts crazily fell like raindrops, bombarding the pot one after another, crazily trying to destroy it. However, no matter how many lightning bolts came, the divine pot didn't reject them. It swallowed all of them into the pot and used them to refine the pot. The divine pot also became more and more condensed and extraordinary. At the beginning, the divine light on the divine pot was dazzling, but later on, the divine light on the divine pot became more and more restrained, and it became more and more simple. The tribulation lightning didn't cause any damage to it at all. In the end, the divine pot seemed to feel that the tribulation lightning wasn't powerful enough. It directly rushed into the tribulation clouds and swallowed the entire tribulation cloud into the pot. The heavenly tribulation disappeared on the spot. Whoosh! With a whoosh, the divine pot shrank to the size of an ordinary teapot. It also swallowed the divine fire below it, becoming the divine fire of the pot. It was connected as one, and it couldn't be extinguished. Then, it instantly flew in front of D. Shirtion and landed in his hand. What a treasure! D. Shirtion's eyes flashed with a strange light as he carefully sized up the divine pot in his hand. Looking at its shape, it was like a heart, but there was an additional mouth, a handle, and 7 orifices on its body. The divine light was restrained, and the body of the pot was covered with fine and mysterious divine patterns. These divine patterns seemed to contain endless truths of heaven and earth. It could be said that the pot in front of him was quite different from the God-refining pot recorded in the mysterious Jade Scroll. For example, the pot recorded in the Jade Scroll wasn't the pot in front of him that didn't have a mouth and was completely like a hole, using the 7 orifices to devour everything. Although the divine formation in the pot was still the same, it was more powerful. It used the 7 orifices exquisite stone, which was almost impossible to destroy. Compared to the ordinary God-refining pot, it was on a higher level. The divine effect was stronger. What a treasure! D. Shirtion praised continuously. The pot could be big or small, but it was extremely heavy. He said, "The pot is refined from the 7 orifices exquisite stone. Since that's the case, I'll give you a name. It's called the 7 orifices exquisite pot. From now on, help me refine divine crystals and lay the foundation for the divine city in the future." Plop, plop. The 7 orifices exquisite pot was indeed very spiritual. When it heard the name D. Shirtion gave it, it magically jumped as if it was happy. It even exuded an aura of intimacy towards him. Crazy D, quick, use it to refine divine crystals. I've never heard of divine crystals in the ancient times. I want to see what kind of treasure the combination of the immortal Tao and divine Tao refining methods can refine. Dark's eyes lit up as he looked at the divine pot and urged. Once the divine pot was completed, it meant that the divine crystals that he had been looking forward to could be refined. Who wouldn't want to see such a treasure that wasn't in the various worlds or the 5 elements as soon as possible? No hurry. I still need to refine an artifact to hold it. Although D. Shirtion also wanted to see the divine crystals as soon as possible, he didn't panic. Now that he had refined the pot, the artifact to hold the divine crystals couldn't be ordinary. According to records, the divine crystals refined in the pot weren't complete at first, but liquid. They had to cool down and solidify on their own before they finally took shape. The artifact to hold the divine crystals was also very particular. It had to be 10,000-year-old warm jade and 10,000-year-old ice jade. The two had to be fused together to nurture yin and yang. These two things had already been obtained in the pavilion of delicacy. It wasn't difficult to refine them. Compared to refining the pot, it was many times easier. It only took a month to refine a crystal treasure box. The box was rectangular, 9 feet long, and 5 feet wide. It was a combination of the 9 and 5 supremes. All right, I'll test the power of the divine pot today. After preparing everything, Tion was also looking forward to it. He placed the pot in front of him, and with a thought, it became as tall as a person. The supreme treasure box was right in front of the pot. With a wave of his hand, he took out a storage bag. With a crash, a pile of ordinary refining materials, such as copper essence and iron essence, piled up into a small mountain. They were all materials that ordinary cultivators carried with them to refine Dharma artifacts. Although he didn't like them, he had always kept them with him. He was waiting to use them to refine the divine crystals today. Don't! With a thought, the 7 orifices exquisite pot jumped up and down. A ball of 7-colored divine light burst out from the pot, covering all the materials that were piled up high. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 430. After covering all the materials, the colorful mist returned to the pot through its 7 orifices. In the blink of an eye, all the colorful mist disappeared, and the 7 orifices exquisite pot returned to its simple and ordinary state, as if nothing had happened. But the miraculous thing was that the mountain of refining materials that had been covered by the dense Qi had also strangely disappeared at the same time. Apparently, they had entered the pot together with the colorful mist. At this moment, Sakura could clearly feel that there was a golden divine fire in the pot, and above the divine fire, there was actually a small mountain of miscellaneous items gathered from various refining materials. These ordinary materials melted at a speed visible to the naked eye under the refinement of the divine fire. The divine fire in the pot was already a part of the 7 orifices exquisite pot and had a mysterious connection with Tion. This was because he discovered that there was a mysterious connection between the power of faith in his body and the divine fire. As the divine fire burned, wisps of power of faith poured into the divine fire from the void and turned into threads of divine power. They spread out in all directions and gradually filled the entire pot. There was no need for Tion to control it. Once the materials entered, the divine pot would operate on its own, and the devour the heavens and earth deity refining formation would be activated. Countless divine seals were released and merged into the pot. The materials and divine power inside fused together in a mysterious way. The perfect fusion was no longer divine power, nor was it a pure refinement material. The combination of the two materials formed a unique liquid that did not belong to refinement material or divine power. It was the fusion of the divine path and immortal path. They absorbed each other's strengths and formed an object that transcended the divine path and immortal path. Indra didn't dare to relax his mind for even a moment as he carefully observed every change in the pot. He discovered that the divine power formed by the power of faith condensed into mysterious divine seals under the power of the divine formation and fused together with the materials. It was these divine seals that changed the nature of the materials. They became a new object. TSK. What a miraculous method. I didn't expect the human race to be so creative. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed that the divine path and immortal path could be so perfectly fused into a new object. It's too miraculous. It actually has the characteristics of the divine path and immortal path at the same time. To be able to create an object that transcends the 5 elements, the owner of that mysterious jade slip is definitely a rare genius. Ming gave a rare, heartfelt compliment. When he heard the liquid flowing in the pot, he revealed a look of curiosity. The power of the divine flame in the pot was boundless. Ordinary refining materials were refined into a liquid without much effort. Then they were melted together with the divine power, forming a crystal-like liquid. It flowed in the pot. Traces of impurities were constantly refined, making the liquid more and more crystal clear. Stars twinkled in the sky like a river of stars. Not only was it flawless, it was also extraordinarily gorgeous. 15 minutes later, Sakura controlled the 7 orifices exquisite pot and appeared on top of the supreme treasure box. He tilted the pot, and immediately, the crystal liquid with specks of starlight could be seen falling into the box. In the blink of an eye, the jade box was filled to the brim with liquid. He stopped pouring and closed the lid of the jade box. A yin-yang taiji diagram appeared on the top of the box. It spun 9 times and sucked the surrounding power of heaven and earth into the diagram. As the yin-yang fish swam, it turned into yin-yang energy and fell into the box. After 9 revolutions, the treasure box opened on its own, and a dense chi spread out. When Xiao Chun looked at the box, he saw that it was still a clump of water-like liquid. Now, when he looked at it again, the original liquid had miraculously condensed into a crystal. It had completely solidified. This crystal was like a crystal with specks of starlight flowing in it. On the surface, there was a layer of mysterious patterns distributed on every inch of the crystal. These patterns weren't deliberately imprinted, but were naturally formed like the growth rings of a tree. These patterns were definitely not ordinary. At first glance, they seemed very ordinary. However, if one took a closer look, they would feel that these lines seemed to contain extremely mysterious mysteries. It was as if they had a life of their own as they swam and changed from time to time. It was a mystical sight. The whole piece of divine crystal exuded a kind of godlike majesty. Although it was quietly placed in the box, it could still attract people's attention instantly. There was no power of the 5 elements on it, nor was there any spiritual energy fluctuation of refining materials. It was beyond the 5 elements. It was independent of the 5 elements. Divine crystal, this is the divine crystal. At this moment, Sakura's mind couldn't help but tremble as he revealed an excited expression. His eyes stared intently at the crystal-like crystal in the box, looking forward to the stars and the moon. Looking forward to it for how long? It could be said that from the moment he knew about the existence of the divine crystal, he had been looking forward to the day that he could refine this magical treasure. At this moment, he had finally refined it and seen it with his own eyes. He reached out his right hand and sucked at the divine crystal. Suddenly, the crystal-like divine crystal flew out of the box and was held in his hand like an enlarged brick. With a thought, a pure royal true power surged out from his body and poured into the divine crystal along his arm. Boom! The royal true force flowed into the divine crystal unhindered, and in an instant, Sakura felt that when a portion of his royal true force entered the divine crystal, it was suddenly magnified by 10 times. At the same time, the divine crystal burst out with a layer of dense crystal divine light. The veins on the surface seemed to be completely alive, emitting a powerful divine aura like that of a god. In an instant, it was enlarged by 100 times. The vast power caused the air around it to strangely solidify. The brick smashed down 100 feet in front of him. Rumble! Under the brick formed by the divine crystal, the ground was smashed into a terrifying deep pit. The deep pit was in the shape of a brick, bombarding a terrifying abyss that was thousands of feet deep. Then, the divine crystal returned to its original state and returned to his hand. He still looked as perfect and flawless as ever. It was like an ornament, not a sharp offensive weapon. Amazing. When I pour my power in, it can increase by 10 times in an instant. It can also be used as a magic weapon. There's no need to refine it. It is comparable to a mid-grade magic weapon. Moreover, this divine crystal is so hard that it is almost impossible to damage it. If it is used to refine magic weapons or divine weapons, it is the best material. The refined weapons are incomparably sharp and can allow any power to enter the body. There is no need to be afraid of not being able to withstand it. Moreover, It can also store incense and power of will and use it to become stronger. Amazing, too incredible. Using it to build the demon city was a good idea. Tion was overjoyed. Divine crystals were also divided into 3 grades: high, middle, and low. Above them, there was the most precious divine crystal. As for the piece before him, it was only made from the lowest grade materials. It was only a low-grade divine crystal. However, there was a method to synthesize it. One could put 3 blocks of divine crystal into the exquisite gourd and smelt it into a mid-grade divine crystal. Then, with 3 blocks of mid-grade divine crystal, one could smelt a high-grade divine crystal. As for a supreme-grade divine crystal, it would require 100 blocks of high-grade divine crystal to be smelted. The grades of the divine crystal were differentiated by the number of divine seals contained in the divine crystal. For example, there were 1,000 divine seals in a low-grade divine crystal, 10,000 divine seals in a mid-grade divine crystal, 100,000 divine seals in a high-grade divine crystal, and 1,000,000 divine seals in a top-grade divine crystal. The more divine seals there were, the stronger the power and the higher the quality. It was extremely precious. Divine crystals were calculated in square blocks. Just like the one in his hand, it was a square block. This was a treasure. It could absorb the power of will to become stronger. In the future, it could be used to strengthen the demon city. To the secular world, this city was called the Divine City, and he lived in the Divine City. At that time, the object of faith would also be the Divine City. Hundreds of millions of divine seals would be applied to the city. Day after day, the entire ancient city would become stronger. The divine crystal was indeed mysterious and had endless uses. TSK, Lunatic D, you have to keep that jade slip well. That is not an ordinary treasure. The things inside are too shocking. Only when you have it in your own hands can you truly be at ease. Otherwise, you would rather destroy it than let others have it. Murderous light flashed in Ming's eyes as he realized the true value of the mysterious jade slip. Just like the divine crystal, it was a rare treasure in the world. Whoever had it would have the ability to change everything. Of course, no one can control such a powerful weapon except for yourself. Tion said coldly. He was not a child. How could he not understand the true value of the jade slip? It could be said to be a rare top treasure. It was ranked in the top 10 treasures. There was still more than half of the divine liquid in the exquisite pot that had not been poured out. He poured the divine liquid into the box again with ease, condensing it into cubes of divine crystals. When all the divine liquid in the pot was poured out, there were only 10 cubes of divine crystals in total. The materials that had just been swallowed into the pot were almost like a small mountain. That was all the low-level refining materials he had collected all the time, but only 10 cubes of divine crystals were condensed. It could be seen how rare divine crystals were. It seems that when I return to the southern barbarian land, I have to ask Chi Hua and the others to find some mineral veins, dig out various spiritual materials, and use the raw ores to refine divine crystals. I remember that Chan Shi and the others have never dug a spiritual mine, so there should be a lot of mineral veins. Tion made up his mind in a flash. Although he could throw a large number of useless Dharma artifacts into the pot to refine divine crystals, compared to the needs of building a city, it was simply a drop in the bucket. He still needed other sources, such as the power of the demons in the 10,000 Demon Valley. I don't know which floor the exquisite pagoda sealed the millions of demons in the heavenly demon secret realm. With my current strength, I can completely subdue those demons and be called the king of demons. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. I support the author, and I support the original readers. Chapter 431. Back then, the Linglong Treasure Pagoda had absorbed the entire sky, famed mystic realm into the pagoda. That vast treasure vault, the majestic Huang Quan Holy River, the mysterious Spider Lily Island, and even the two great Fey masters that were suppressed. 1,000,000 Fey creatures. Everything. The treasures that he saw back then were all sealed in the pagoda by Ziyu's backup plan. Until now, apart from the Linglong treasure pagoda and the tens of thousands of Fey ancient books in the first layer, he hadn't been able to get a single one of the benefits he obtained in the secret realm. Speaking of which, even Di Shurtian himself felt a little ashamed. It wasn't because Ziyu had set up a backup plan to prevent him from really obtaining the shocking treasures, but because of his own strength and cultivation. Ziyu's arrangement was obviously to prevent Gao Weiyuan from becoming complacent and provoking an unstoppable calamity after obtaining such a precious treasure with his weak cultivation base. As a result, he died prematurely. In essence, it was for his own good. The treasures were all sealed in the pagoda. If he wanted to take them, his cultivation base would need to reach a certain level. At this moment, his Fey Core second transformation could enter the second layer of the pagoda. He guessed that when his cultivation base reached the Fey Core third transformation, he should be able to open the door to the third layer of the pagoda and enter the third layer. He had a hunch that as long as he opened the third layer, he should be able to see the 1,000,000 Fey creatures he saw back then. Breakthrough, I must break through. Once the 1,000,000 Fey are under my control, my power will grow rapidly. At that time, I will be able to start preparing to build a Fey city. Above all Fey, I will be the king of Fey. When Di Shurtian thought of the endless treasures contained in the Linglong treasure pagoda, endless energy surged in his body, filled with passion and a high fighting spirit. His eyes shone brightly. Once he subdued the 1,000,000 Fey creatures, he would be the king of Fey. With his cultivation base, he had this qualification. Looking at the 10 square meters of divine crystals, he took out his storage pouch and wanted to put them in. However, the strange thing was that the storage pouch couldn't hold the divine crystals at all. He replaced it with a storage ring, but it was the same in the wild. He couldn't put in the storage space at all. It was really miraculous. In this regard, Di Shurtian pondered for a moment and did not pay too much attention to it. After finding a clean spot, Zhang Xian sat down without wasting any time. In order to forge the 7 orifices gourd, he had already spent a full 10 years. Before entering the heaven-reaching pagoda, he had already made up his mind to enter seclusion in the heaven-reaching pagoda for a year. In other words, he would spend 50 years in the second level of the heaven-reaching pagoda. Now that 10 years had passed, there were only 40 years left. His internal cultivation was already at the peak of a breakthrough, and the opportunity for a breakthrough was right in front of him. However, he wasn't in a hurry to break through immediately. Instead, he nurtured his mind until it was calm, like the moon in the well, unperturbed by the waves. Everything was calm. His royal true force continued to circulate through the various demonic veins in his body. While nourishing the demonic veins, it also continued to strengthen his flesh and blood. This preparation lasted for an entire year. It's time. Unknowingly, the pair of slightly closed eyes slowly opened. He looked into the void with a deep gaze. His breakthrough was different from the other demon clans. The other demon clans only needed to think of a way to withstand the demonic tribulation. However, he was different. Not only did he have to pass the demonic tribulation, but he also had to enter the Black Lotus to pass the realm of desire. The desire state was even more terrifying than the demonic tribulation. He could step into a state of eternal damnation at any time. This was a tribulation. Once he broke through, he would have to face 2 kinds of tribulations at the same time. This was not 1 + 1 = 2. The danger was 10 times or even 100 times greater than others. The most terrifying thing was to enter the desire state and not be able to come out. The first 2 times he entered the realm of desire, he still remembered it clearly in his mind. Each time, it was extremely dangerous. During the second time, he almost failed. He had to transform into someone else and experience someone else's life. If he wasn't careful, he would lose his nature. Sinking into it, he would be doomed. Almost every time, it was more dangerous than the previous. I stand here, I am the Emperor. Heaven and earth are under my control. The sun and moon revolve around me. I don't believe that a little desire state can do anything to me. Tion was full of confidence. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes again. His whole mind poured into the demon palace without reservation. He condensed his body and appeared in the demon refining cauldron. He looked at the third-grade black lotus floating on the liquid below. The black lotus was constantly rotating at a constant speed. On the surface, there were these 11 mysterious seals. The black lotus contained a huge amount of imperial true force and the power of desire. Among the third grade, only the first grade still had the power of desire. The power of desire contained a strong joy in joy. It affected one's mind, and some festive past events involuntarily appeared. He couldn't help but want to laugh out loud. Usually, laughing once or twice would help to recuperate the body and mind. It was good for the body. However, if one was infected with this kind of joy and desire, then one would laugh nonstop. This would cause great harm to one's vitality. Perhaps it would not be a rare thing to laugh to death. In the Black Lotus, the power of joy had been filled to the brim and had almost reached the limit. The power of desire that was emitted could erupt a terrifying power from afar. However, Sakura had already passed the test of 2 states of desire. In terms of temperament, he already had a considerable resistance to desire, and his mind was even more tenacious. Why come out again? I will be a 3rd transformation monster pill, Tion said firmly. His words were full of strong confidence. Xiaoqin no longer hesitated. He rubbed his body, and his mind rushed into the state of desire without any hesitation. Rumble. The moment it entered, the originally calm Black Lotus suddenly burst forth with an intense black light. With a boom, it began to spin at an unprecedented speed. Below the Black Lotus, streams of pure demonic qi were continuously sucked into the Black Lotus like a whale sucking in water. Meanwhile, in the demon manor outside the demon refining cauldron, the power of desire flooded into the cauldron like a tide. Outside his body, Sakura's entire body suddenly emitted endless majesty. He broke away from his human body and transformed into a demon body that was as tall as 100 feet, standing between heaven and earth. A vast and mighty pressure burst forth from his huge tiger body in all directions. The pressure caused the space within a radius of thousands of feet to solidify. The purple royal pattern on its forehead vividly displayed the innate royal might of this fiendish demon body. It kept flashing. Every time it flashed, the majesty became stronger. At the same time, the power of heaven and earth within a radius of thousands of feet rolled in and gathered towards him, forming a terrifying spiritual chi vortex in the sky above. A huge amount of power of heaven and earth constantly rushed into the monster body, cleansing it, strengthening it, and turning it into power, gushing into the Black Lotus. The colorful spiritual chi in the surroundings wrapped around him, not leaving a single trace behind. Inside his body, there was a shocking change. In the 3rd grade Black Lotus, since Xiaoqian's mind entered the desire state, the breakthrough had already begun. Waves of pale, golden royal true power were constantly spewing out, rushing out of the monster mansion and into the body through the monster vein connected to the heart. And it quickly followed the monster vein. At this moment, from the first to the second monster vein, the small branches seemed to have a life of their own. Under the stimulation of the royal true power, they quickly extended and took root in every inch of flesh. Densely packed, they formed a mysterious meridian network. Every time a large amount of royal true power flowed through an inch of the demon vein, there would be a pure, true power that would directly merge into the demon vein, strengthening the demon vein's toughness, making it even more resilient. The demon vein was nourished, and similarly, it was brimming with vitality. The royal true power did not stop. After cleansing the monster vein that had been refined before, it rushed into the 3rd monster vein. In a moment, the 3rd monster vein was like a dry sponge, greedily absorbing waves of pure, true power to nourish it. Then, one could see that at the edge of the demon vein, one could see a small branch vein slowly appear. They also spread out in all directions, piercing into the flesh. In the blink of an eye, the royal true power had completely penetrated the third monster vein. It was just that the third demonic vein's branch vein was still small and weak, as if it was going to break at any moment. This was not something that could be changed in a short period of time. It needed to be nourished day after day with true power to allow these new branch veins to slowly become strong and durable. However, the third monster vein was opened. In a short period of time, the entire monster body was magically strengthened by several times. New power of desire continuously integrated into the flesh, strengthening the monster body. As the power of heaven and earth integrated into the flesh, the monster body inevitably began to expand violently. Rumble. In the sky, a three-colored tribulation cloud condensed out of thin air, appearing above D. Shirtian's head. It was huge to the point where it was thousands of feet. In the tribulation cloud, countless lightning bolts flashed crazily like hundreds of millions of lightning snakes. Thick lightning bolts shuttled back and forth in the clouds. It was the arrival of the 3-9 monster tribulations. In the three-color tribulation cloud, there were 3 types of 5 elements power intertwined. In the collision, there was a burst of terrifying aura. As if it was destroying the world, the space around the tribulation cloud was distorted. A vast pressure poured down like an avalanche and pressed down on D. Shirtian. The changes in the outside world were all controlled by the body's instincts. However, the real key was inside the body. The mind was undergoing the test of desire. Outside the body, it was undergoing the tempering of the monster tribulations. Inside and outside, it was bitter. Congratulations. 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 Yi Qing, you can actually get the most beautiful girl in Qingping Town. Yin Hongye. Miss Hongye, really enviable. Yes, Miss Yin Hongye is the only good girl in our town. She is proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, and her appearance is even more beautiful. She's envied by others. In a simple town, there was a festive atmosphere everywhere. There were lanterns and decorations, and a large number of people in the town stood on both sides of the street. At the end of the street was a large house. There were big lions standing on both sides of the door. A young man wearing a groom's outfit with a big red flower on his chest and a face full of joy was greeting the people around him with a smile. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 432. Thank you. Thank you all for coming to drink my Yi Qing's wedding wine. Please come in and have a seat. The young man, named Yi Qing, was brimming with joy that could not be concealed. He greeted the surrounding villagers with a smile on his face, but his eyes were nervously staring at the end of the street, as if he was waiting for something to come. Upon closer inspection, if there was a mirror here, one would discover that the appearance of this young man called Yi Qing was exactly the same as Sakura. However, he did not have the domineering aura of a king. Instead, there was only a scholarly aura of righteousness, and there was a scholarly aura that was cultivated from reading a lot of books. However, it was not the weak scholarly aura of an ordinary scholar. It was the upright Confucian aura of an indomitable spirit. Under the contrast of this aura, he appeared even more outstanding and had a unique temperament. It was unforgettable. Deep impression. It looked like he was going to get married. There were 4 great joys in life. Due after a long drought, meeting an old friend in a foreign land. On the wedding night, when the imperial examination. At this moment, Yi Qing was experiencing the joy of marriage in life, and joy was overflowing in his heart. No matter where he went, he was smiling, as if there was no worry in his heart. Even the people around him could be affected. Woo-la! Looking forward to it, a burst of festive music on the street came from afar. Looking up on the opposite side, there was a wedding procession coming here, carrying an 8-person big bridal sedan, steadily walking toward Yi Qing. Dear villagers, please forgive Yi Qing for a moment. The sedan chair has arrived, and the auspicious time has arrived. I'm going to pick up the bride. Please go inside and have a sip of tea. Yi Qing smiled and said to the villagers around him. The villagers around him had a look of understanding, showing a blessing smile, and let him lead the wedding procession away. The Yi family, that's 9 generations of only one son. Every generation has been kind and charitable, paving the way and building bridges and helping the poor. Young Master Yi Qing is even more knowledgeable and is known far and wide for being a good person. The heavens will definitely protect their family. The imperial examinations will begin next year. If young Master Yi participates, he will definitely be the top scorer. Unfortunately, I heard that the descendants of the Yi family are not allowed to participate in the government. Isn't that so? I hope the heavens can bless young Master Yi Qing to have a child soon. In the discussions, almost all of them were praising the Yi clan's reputation in the town. It was as if they were a family of great kindness. Every generation of the Yi clan's ancestral teachings were to do good deeds. Although the Yi clan's business was huge, with all kinds of shops opening up to the north and south of the river, and the wealth they earned every day could be said to be a bucket full of gold. The family's wealth could be compared to that of a country. However, they were not stingy like the rich. Most of them were taken from the people and used by the people. They constantly took out money to help the poor and the victims of disasters. It was passed down from generation to generation. Almost half of the people in the country had received the kindness of a Yi clan. The 9 generations of good deeds had almost gathered the hearts of countless people. Let's not talk about this. However, it didn't take long for Yi Qing to return with the wedding procession. In the bridal sedan chair, there was a peerless beauty wearing a phoenix cape and a red crown. It was lively. When the wedding night was over, the red veil was lifted. What was covered under was really a beautiful woman. This woman, except for her different temperament, looked exactly the same as Chun Shi. Almost the same. Yi Qing looked exactly the same as Di Shitian, and Yin Hongye looked exactly the same as Chun Shi. Where was this? It was the state of desire that Di Shitian had entered. The 7 emotions and 6 desires were things that even peerless experts were not willing to touch. Even peerless experts were not those who had forgotten their emotions. On the contrary, those who were able to reach the peak were mostly those who had returned to their roots and found their own hearts. They would unleash their own temperament to the extreme. If one's nature was dark, then one would be a demon. If one's nature was sincere, then one was a god. No matter if one was a god or a demon, one was oneself. If one had feelings in one's heart, there would be desires. If one had desires, it was impossible to escape the influence of the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Normally, a little bit of the power of desires would naturally not affect them. However, in order to cultivate the power of desires, one must first throw oneself into it. If one couldn't control and not be affected by it, even they would be blinded by their desires and sink into it, never to rise again. Although Sakura was extremely daring and had found a shortcut to form all 13 demonic veins in his body, to truly control them and use them for his own use, it was still difficult to avoid. However, he had to walk a groove in the 13 realms of Tao Desire. Each realm of Tao Desire was more dangerous than the previous. The first 2 times, he was lucky enough to successfully pass it and control the 2 types of desires in his body. He was no longer affected by them. His primordial spirit and true power had the unique power of the 2 types of desires. He also realized that every time he grasped a type of power of desire, it meant that he could absorb the same type of power of desire at any time and place. Under such a situation, his cultivation speed instantly increased by several times. After going through the first state of desire, the monster body naturally gained a unique characteristic. It naturally drew in the power of desire, increasing its cultivation speed by 3 times on the spot. This 3 times cultivation speed was because it could absorb more power of desire than ordinary living beings. After going through the second state of desire, its cultivation speed increased once again, reaching 6 times the cultivation speed of ordinary living beings. It almost doubled. If he passed this test and gained the recognition of the power of joy in the desire, he could immediately increase his cultivation speed by 9 times. At every moment, there was a huge amount of power surging into his body and into his demon residence. Unfortunately, the state of desire was stronger each time. The first 2 times were still okay. In the beginning, after all, there was a period of time when he was clear. He could clearly recognize who he was. At every critical moment, he could always use the Imperial Tyrant Heart mantra to protect his mind. He was able to protect himself and finally transcend. But this time was completely different from before. As soon as he entered, before he could wake up, he appeared in an inexplicable place. He directly turned into a baby in swaddling clothes. There was no memory of D. Shurtion in his mind. There was only a blank innocence like that of a baby. His memories had been strangely sealed. He had always been living here, growing up under the care of his parents. Here, there were parents who loved him dearly, and there were kind villagers. Every day of his life was filled with joy and joy, without a trace of worry or worry. Whatever he wanted, he could have it. Some happy things would happen by his side. He would not be willing to exchange for it, even if he used an immortal. Now, he was married, and he had completely integrated into this world. He felt that he was really a part of this place. With his parents in the same room and his wife by his side, it could be said that he was infinitely happy. If this was a dream, he would rather never wake up in this dream. Sinking. This kind of thought could be said to be terrifying. If there was really a day when he did not wake up from this strange state of desire, he would be immersed in countless surprises and slowly spend his life. When he was old, he still could not recall his memories. His own will was not to leave this world, and he was willing to stay in this wonderful happiness. Once he grew old, once his lifespan was exhausted, and he died in the state of desire, then Shurtion would really disappear completely, and his body and soul would be destroyed. This was almost equivalent to boiling a frog in warm water. In the state of desire, Shurtion still did not know anything. He turned into Yi Qing, thinking about the beautiful soul of the wedding night. He did not know that he was walking step by step into the abyss. Traces of obsession, step by step, were pulling him into the endless abyss of death. And outside of his body, above his head, the 3-9 demonic tribulation also showed its might. Bolts of tribulation lightning as thick as a water bucket crazily fell down like raindrops, all bombarding the huge tiger body of Sakura. The destructive power contained in the tribulation lightning burned the fur on his demon body into a patch of black. Countless terrifying lightning bolts entered his body through his pores, shuttling through every inch of flesh and blood in his body. It was constantly destroying. It was as if it really wanted to completely destroy him. Fortunately, the third grade black lotus in the demon palace was frantically operating, emitting an amazing devouring power, constantly absorbing the tribulation lightning that entered his body into the black lotus, tempering the black lotus and the imperial true force inside. However, without Shurtion's personal control, relying on his own instinct, he still could not completely devour all the power of the tribulation lightning. There was still a large amount of tribulation lightning crazily destroying the monster body. For a short time, he might be able to rely on the strength of the monster body to hold on for a while, but if the time was too long, he was afraid that he would also be in danger of dying. Now, his mind was at a loss in the state of desire. Inside and outside, it was as if a disaster was in front of him. Clang! In the 10,000 demon valley of the southern wilderness. Almost all the demon clans of the southern wilderness had gathered in the 10,000 demon valley, and there were no less than 100,000 of them. Compared to before, it was several times livelier. However, each of them seemed to be full of vitality and enthusiasm. Many buildings had been built in the valley, but the most conspicuous one was the pagoda standing in the valley. Almost every little demon would take a look at the pagoda when they passed by. Their eyes burst with endless fighting spirit, emerging with endless energy and hope. They had an endless yearning for the pagoda. A large number of demon clans in the valley, in terms of temperament, had vaguely changed. They were no longer undisciplined, but had a strong sense of cohesion. There were also some little demons patrolling in the valley in groups. In the section of the waterfall in the valley, a quiet courtyard was built. When they were free, they could enjoy the scene of the waterfall hanging in the front. At this moment, in the backyard, Chun-Shi, dressed in plain clothes, was sitting in a pavilion, facing the waterfall sideways and looking at the pool. In front of him was a 7-string guqin. With a broken sound, a string made of 1,000-year-old silk on the guqin strangely broke. It broke into 2 sections and his index finger tingled. The guqin string cut his finger and a drop of blood came out. The guqin string broke. This is an ominous sign. My heart hurts so much. Chun-Shi's face suddenly changed. He only felt a stabbing pain in his heart. It was so painful that even breathing was a little difficult. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. I support the author, and I support the original readers. Chapter 433. She clutched her chest with her jade-like hands, feeling an unbearable pain in her heart. An unprecedented pain spread to every corner of her body. Even with Chun-Shi's self-control, she could not help but turn pale. Her delicate body trembled slightly, and a dense layer of fragrant sweat appeared on her face. It was clear how terrible the pain was. Fortunately, this kind of heart-piercing pain only lasted for a short moment and disappeared in the blink of an eye. She vaguely felt that her loved ones were going through an unimaginable calamity and could die at any time. The broken strings and the inexplicable stabbing pain in her heart were obviously an ominous sign. She had received the inheritance of the goddess of 100 flowers, so she understood a lot of things. Naturally, she knew that this was definitely not an illusion, but a kind of mysterious feeling. This kind of feeling was extremely spiritual and would only happen to things related to her and her loved ones. Every time it appeared, there was bound to be a calamity. If it was not her, it would be someone else. And at this moment, the only person who was related to her and was outside was only Di Shirtion. It's Shirtion. What kind of danger has he encountered to make me feel such a bad omen? Chun-Shi's face suddenly became quite unsightly. With a wave of her hand, 2 white jade lamps were placed on the table in front of her. On the lamps, there were 2 lamps that were constantly emitting light. The flame in one of them was very strong, but there was nothing unusual about it. On the other hand, the flame in the other lamp was flickering as if there was a gust of wind blowing towards it. Even the lamp became abnormally dim, as if it could be extinguished at any time. It was very fragile. Shirtion's natal spirit lamp has become so weak. Something really has happened. Chun-Shi's usually indifferent face showed a kind of deep worry. She took a deep breath and stared at the flame in the lamp without blinking. It should be known that these 2 lamps were not ordinary lamps, but a kind of natal spirit lamp. Chun-Shi inadvertently saw a kind of magic treasure in the demon clan's ancient scrolls in the exquisite pagoda. The lamp itself did not possess any offensive power. The flames within the lamp were also not ordinary flames. They were primordial spirit flames. When a strand of primordial spirit was placed into the lamp, it would turn into a lamp flame. At that time, this light represented the flame of his life. If it was outside, once he died, the light would be extinguished. The stronger one was, the stronger the light would be. What was even more amazing was that at a critical moment, he could rely on this natal Yuan Shin lamp to sense the location of the owner of the lamp, and he could also check the other party's situation under the condition of consuming Yuan Qi. Although it was only for an instant, he was able to find out where the other party was in danger. Before Di Shirtion left, he left this natal spirit lamp with Chun-Shi. Now that he saw the scene of the primordial spirit fire, how could he not guess that Di Shirtion must be in unimaginable danger at this time. You promised me that when you built the demon city in the future, you would officially marry me. You did not fulfill your promise. I will not allow anything to happen to you." Chun-Shi firmly spat out a sentence. His expression became unusually dignified. His hands quickly formed a series of mysterious seals, and between his 10 fingers, mysterious demon characters flashed. They fell into the natal Yuan Shun lamp. Wong! The natal Yuan Shun lamp shook violently, and the light in the lamp suddenly emitted thousands of golden rays of light, intertwining with each other and condensing into a golden mirror in midair. A layer of light flashed through the mirror, and suddenly, an image flashed from the mirror. This is Tribulation Transcendence? 3-color tribulation cloud. He is going through the 3-9 demonic tribulation. She thought that he might have encountered some strong enemy that he could not resist, and also thought that he might be trapped in some dangerous place. But she never thought that Di Tian was actually going through the 3-9 demonic tribulation. Moreover, from the looks of it, he did not even resist under the demonic tribulation. He just lay on the ground, letting the tribulation thunder madly fall on his body, bombarding his demon body until his skin and flesh were split open. This was obviously not a normal tribulation transcendence scene, as if he was passively enduring the tribulation thunder. Bang! To maintain this mirror, the 100-flower essence in Chun-Shi's body drained like a tide. In the blink of an eye, his face turned pale, and the power in his body was almost exhausted. The mirror could no longer be maintained, and it collapsed on the spot. The image inside naturally disappeared. I remember Tian told me that because he absorbed the power of desire, there are a total of 13 states of desire. Every time he breaks through, he needs to enter the state of desire to undergo the test of desire. That test is more dangerous than any tribulation, and he has to put his mind and soul into it without reservation, to undergo the demonic tribulation and the state of desire at the same time. If he is not careful, he will be consigned to eternal damnation. This situation, could it be that something happened to him in the state of desire? Chun-Shi was not an ordinary demon, and his intelligence was only above that of humans. Almost in the blink of an eye, he roughly figured out what had happened from some of the information he had received in the past. Desire is the most powerful thing to confuse a person's mind and soul. Back then, Tian was bewitched by desire, and that's why, in his mind, he recalled the scene when he was kidnapped by Di Tian. His slightly pale face could not help but blush, and his face was a little hot. He hurriedly threw these messy thoughts aside. A divine light flashed in his eyes. No matter what, I have to find a way to wake you up. His mind suddenly made up, and his pair of beautiful eyes slowly closed. At the same time, in her body, a trace of consciousness followed a kind of vague feeling and quickly escaped. When it reappeared, it actually appeared in Di Tian's body. In Di Tian's body, there were a total of 13 demonic veins. Among them, 3 were completely unobstructed and were completely under his control. The Emperor's true force could freely travel through them, tempering his body and absorbing the power of the outside world for his own use. However, there were still 10 demonic veins that were sealed. Even the 10 terrifying desires in the demonic veins were sealed together. And the thing that sealed these 10 demonic veins was the half of the divine essence that he had obtained from Chun-Shi's body. If not for the divine essence in Chun-Shi's body, he would have completely died in the boundless desire that year. This divine essence was incomparably huge and was accumulated by Chun-Shi for tens of thousands of years. Although it entered Di Tian's body, it was only turned into a seal and was not refined at all. There was a mysterious connection between her and Chun-Shi. If she really wanted to, she would have to pay a certain price. It was not that she did not have a chance to get back that half of the divine essence from him. Divine essence returns to one fleeting youth. Chun-Shi had made use of the unbreakable and unbreakable connection between her and the divine essence to cross time and space in one fell swoop and enter Di Tian's body with her consciousness. Suddenly, the third demonic meridian, which had sealed the entire demonic meridian, began to emit dense chi, as if it had come to life. It rapidly surged out of the demonic vein and rushed into Di Shirtian's demonic abode. In an instant, it was as if it was pinched by an invisible hand. The ball of pure divine essence quickly gathered, and a dense chi emerged, condensing into a strange flower inside. This strange flower was 3 feet tall, and there was a flower at the top. The flower had 7 petals, and each petal had a different color: red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. The 7 colors competed to shine on the petals, and it was exceptionally beautiful. There seemed to be an astonishing beauty in the flower, and at a glance, one could not help but feel a sense of pleasure and fondness. The flowers seemed to possess the essence of all flowers in the world, including nobility, grace, elegance, pride, and so on. If one carefully sensed it, one could feel the temperament of almost all flowers in this 7-colored strange flower one by one. It was incomparably magical. What was truly inconceivable was that the 7 petals on the flower did not remain the same, nor did they remain still. Instead, after the 7-colored light bloomed, they began to wither one after another in an instant. The red petals began to wither, followed by the orange petals, and in the blink of an eye, they all withered away one after another. In an instant, several springs and autumns had passed. Fleeting youth flower, fleeting youth. In this world, only she possessed a divine ability that defied the natural order. One of kind. If you really have me in your heart, then when you see this fleeting youth flower, you will be able to recall your unambiguous memories. If you have never had me in your heart, then I am only a kind of responsibility. After you pass away, Chunshi will leave behind your bloodline. A faint voice echoed in the demon residence, and the fleeting youth flower immediately rushed into the demon refining cauldron with a dense light and directly disappeared into the 3rd-grade black lotus. Immediately after, the divine sense that belonged to Chun, she was withdrawn from Di Shirtian's body. In the myriad demon valley, Chun-Shi opened his eyes again, and his body seemed to have been struck by lightning. With a poof, he spat out a mouthful of essence blood, and his face was as white as a sheet of paper. His expression was full of decadence. "Sister, what's wrong?" With a crash, outside, a vermilion red bird, whose body was emitting red flames and the aura of a divine beast, quickly descended from the sky. Looking at its appearance, who else could it be but the vermilion bird? She had the bloodline of the vermilion bird in her body, and, after drinking an unknown amount of spirit wine, she was lucky enough to stimulate the bloodline in her body. She had truly begun to transform into the vermilion bird, and her body had also become 1 meter tall, with flames all over her body. She had also begun to transform into the fire of the vermilion bird. When she saw Chun, she spit out blood in the sky. She was shocked and quickly rushed down. "Master, tomorrow is Chongyang. Let's go to the Wangfu Cliff to watch the sunrise and accompany you to relax. What do you think?" In a room full of ancient charm, Yi Qing and Yin Hongye snuggled together naked, and there was a strange flush on their faces. A jade hand was placed on his chest, gently drawing circles, and said coquettishly. That expression was indescribably seductive. At this moment, Yi Qing was already middle-aged. Looking at Yin Hongye, who looked exactly like Chenxi, he smiled tenderly and said, "September 9th, Chongyang. Going out to relax and watch the sunrise is a good idea." Gently stroking her soft hair, he naturally agreed. In the state of desire, he still didn't feel anything wrong. Everything in the world was no different from reality. He had long regarded himself as a person here, and he had never thought of anything else. If nothing unexpected happened, he would sink into this state forever. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 434. Di Shirtion was at the critical moment of his breakthrough, so he had no idea what was going on outside. It was none other than the auction on Ling Long, Celestial Island. In the auction, some precious items were bought by Di Shirtion alone. This was not a big problem. After all, with Ling Long Pavilion's wealth, they could easily put up many rare treasures that were not inferior to the previous ones. These are not a big problem. The key was the last supreme treasure of the auction. All Heaven's Wheel. All Heaven's Wheel. In the world, as long as one had some understanding of the cultivation world and the rise of the human clan, most of them knew that there were legends of the 6 ancestors of Taoism and the 3 Buddhas of Buddhism among the human clan. For these famous experts in the universe, they might not know the secrets, but they knew some things that were on the surface. The All Heaven's Wheel was the supreme treasure that the reincarnation Buddha carried with him in his early years. It was quite unbelievable that it would appear in the auction. Before the auction, no one knew anything about it. As a result, when it was displayed, the whole auction was in an uproar. It was really too earth-shattering. When it was revealed, the whole auction hall was filled with eyeballs. According to legend, the All Heaven's Wheel actually contained the orthodoxy of the reincarnation Buddha. His unique cultivation method, All Heaven's reincarnation technique, and enlightenment in dreams could be comprehended by those who got the All Heaven's Wheel if they were fated to. Finally, they could inherit the orthodoxy of the reincarnation Buddha and become the reincarnation Buddha successor. Among the 3 Buddhas of Buddhism, only the reincarnation Buddha had never taken a disciple. According to legend, he was the most concerned about opportunities. Without great luck, great opportunities, and great comprehension, he would not pass it to anyone. He was extremely strict about the orthodoxy. Therefore, although the All Heaven's Wheel itself was a rare treasure, what was really precious about it was the cultivation method and the divine ability it contained. It was the key to the orthodoxy. If one did not have the opportunity, even if he got it, he would not be able to comprehend anything from it for thousands of years. He could only use it as a magic treasure. What was even stranger was that this time, Ling Long Pavilion did not take it out to auction like a normal auction. It was not a competition of wealth, but a competition of opportunity. As long as you believe that you have great luck and opportunity, you can go up there and try it yourself. Whoever can trigger a reaction from the Heaven's Wheel will be the destined successor of the reincarnation Buddha. The reincarnation Buddha will give the Heaven's Wheel to the other party for free. According to Ling Long Pavilion, the celestial wheel was given to them by the Chakravarti Buddha to search for a successor. As a result, the auction became extremely chaotic. No matter who it was, they all held onto the mentality of trying their luck and experimenting. The process at that time was not worth mentioning. However, in the end, it was obtained by a monk named Daoji from Debiai Temple, who was not inferior to the 4 great holy lands. Then, he floated away with the myriad heavens. There was another rumor that when monk Daoji brought the myriad heavens wheel to Cloud Dream Swamp, he was intercepted by 3 mysterious people. After a fierce battle, the myriad heavens wheel was split into 2 and disappeared together with everyone at that time. However, in a short period of time, the entire purple gold mainland was in turmoil because of this matter. Countless cultivators rushed into Cloud Dream Swamp as if they had gone mad. However, they also provoked a great demon hidden in Cloud Dream Swamp that had been in hibernation for countless years, the Kuin Pong. With just a mouth, it swallowed 100,000 cultivators. It was said that at that time, only a mysterious powerhouse named Perfected Lord Ku Rong rushed out with a huge bell. His cultivation was strong, and his divine powers were powerful, shocking everyone. In this short period of time, many things happened in Purple Gold Mainland one after another. Between heaven and earth, there was a sudden storm. And all these happened when Di Shirten entered Tong Tian Tower and was in seclusion to cultivate and break through. Obviously, he seemed to have missed out on some exciting events. However, if he had to choose between participating in those storms and breaking through and becoming stronger, he would not hesitate to make the same choice as now. Breaking through and becoming stronger. Only by becoming stronger could one have the ability to become the main character in the future trend of heaven and earth. Otherwise, it would be like the Yangtze River overtaking the waves in front, and the waves in front would fall on the dam. They would become the stepping stone of others. The 8 demon kings each took out their own assets and auctioned the materials to build the heavenly thunder platform without any hesitation. After the auction, they left together and were in a hurry to build the heavenly thunder platform that could use the purple thunder rain. They were in a hurry to try the magical power of the purple thunder rain with their own eyes and turn the demon clan's unfavorable situation around. At this moment, in Linglong Tower, Di Shirtian was still immersed in the state of desire and was unaware of the world. Outside Qingping Town, the scenery was extremely good. There was a famous place called Husband Gazing Cliff. It was more than 3,000 feet tall, and the mountain peak was majestic. At the top of the mountain, there was a natural divine stone. It was a stone statue of a goddess looking into the distance with an expectant face. This stone statue could not be sculpted by human hands. It was connected to the mountain. It was perfect and flawless. This was the Husband Gazing Rock. The place where the stone statue stood was called the Husband Gazing Cliff. There was a beautiful legend about this cliff. It was said that a long, long time ago at the foot of the mountain, there lived a couple. The husband was a scholar, and the wife was virtuous. It could be said that they were a very loving couple. One year, the husband went to the capital to take the imperial exam. The wife missed her husband so much that she climbed the cliff every day. She looked at the path home, hoping to see the figure of her husband returning home, day after day, but for some reason, her husband did not leave. For many years, there was no news of him, and he did not return home. The wife did not have any other ability. She could only go up the mountain and look into the distance every day, waiting for her husband's return with hope. However, she went with hope every day, and when she returned, she only brought with her deep disappointment. Finally, 3 years later, when the wife went up the mountain to wait for her husband again, she died of exhaustion. Her body turned into a husband-gazing rock and stood there, forever looking in the direction of her husband's return. Husband, what a sad and beautiful story. On the husband-gazing cliff, Yan Hongye, who looked exactly like Chen Shi, nestled in Yi Qing's arms emotionally. There were tears in her eyes. She looked at Yi Qing expectantly and said, "Husband, if you leave me one day, I will also be like this husband-gazing rock, waiting for your return." Her expression was full of affection. Yi Qing gently hugged the delicate body in his arms and said softly, "Silly, how can you say such things? Don't worry, I will never leave you." There was a determined look on his face. It was as if this was an eternal promise. Yes, Yan Hongye exuded a strong sense of happiness. Suddenly, Yan Hongye stretched out her jade-like hand and pointed to the east, shouting cheerfully, "Look, the sun is about to rise." Looking at the horizon, a golden light broke free from the darkness. Although it was weak, it was unusually tough, as if it was going to sweep away the whole darkness. Slowly, hundreds of millions of rays of light bloomed in the east, dyeing the surrounding clouds red. Chunshi seemed to burst out with endless vitality. At this moment, life began to bloom again. A wisp of purple air came automatically. The scene of the sun breaking free from the darkness inch by inch from the horizon, if observed carefully, would definitely give an indescribable sense of shock. The kind of unyielding spirit, that kind of light, that kind of struggle for life, all kinds of feelings could be clearly felt in Shanxi at sunrise, sitting on the top of the cliff, looking at the morning sun. Tens of thousands of rays of golden light enveloped the top of the cliff, as if bathed in countless rays of Buddha's light. The morning sun is so good. Yi Qing sighed. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed as he looked at the first light of dawn. A rainbow-colored divine light suddenly escaped the first light of dawn and descended from the sky, quickly flying towards Wangfu Cliff. This divine light caused his pupils to contract violently. Crash! The divine light landed with a soft sound in front of Yi Qing. It was a rainbow-colored, dreamy, an incomparably gorgeous flower. The 7 petals reflected each other's brilliance, and one after another, they disappeared in a continuous cycle. The unique aura inside was also constantly changing. The moment it appeared, all the colors in the world seemed to lose their color. Even a morning sun that was full of vitality dimmed. It was as if all the beauty in the world was condensed on this strange flower. There were no words in the world that could describe its beauty, because in an instant, the strange flower disappeared, and all kinds of divine charm flickered continuously. In an instant, eternity had passed. This is the momentary wonder flower, the momentary youth. The moment he saw the momentary wonder flower, although Yi Qing had never seen it before, he strangely blurted out its name. Then, as if it had received some kind of signal, the momentary wonder flower transformed into a beam of divine light and rushed into Yi Qing's forehead. It was as if a shocking bolt of lightning had flashed through his mind, shattering some nameless shackles with a cracking sound. Suddenly, in the depths of his mind, sealed memories emerged. Southern wildlands, myriad demon valley. Chunxi, mother, little white. In an instant, countless memories poured out like a fountain, and his original memories were restored. My name is Di Shirtian. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. After a moment of silence, all of his memories were completely restored. His will was incomparably tough, but he had been caught off guard by the realm of desire, which had sealed him in one fell swoop. He had thrown himself into this strange, illusory world, but he hadn't had the opportunity to break the seal. Now, the appearance of fleeting youth had brought him this opportunity, and he instantly understood his situation. Incredible. Truly incredible. Who would have thought that the realm of desire would be so terrifying? The momentary wonder flower? That's Chunxi. When Di Shirtian thought about the current situation, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Beyond redemption. Just a little bit more, and he would be beyond redemption. If he really did run out of longevity in this illusory world and died, then he would truly perish, perishing in the boundless realm of desire. In this illusory world, his life was filled with endless luck, with endless happy events. As long as he wished for something, it would come true. Such a life was one that he wouldn't trade for even if he were given an immortal. When he was entangled by family and emotions, it was impossible to break free. Instead, he would sink deeper and deeper. In the end, his mind would be deceived, and he would be unable to recover. Even now, he couldn't leave the realm of desire, because he had yet to transcend the joy and obsession of the realm of desire. Without seeing through it, there was no way to transcend. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 435. Entering the state of desire was to be reborn after death. If you didn't succeed, you would die trying. Once you entered, you couldn't see through the state of desire. If you detached yourself from desire, even if your memory was clear, you still couldn't leave this illusory world. Only by experiencing it and transcending it could you be qualified to master it. In itself, it was to let you experience it, comprehend it, and integrate yourself into it. In each comprehension, you could be sad and happy in one heart. I can rejoice in joy, I can mourn in sorrow, but I can clearly see through the essence of it. Be it sorrow or joy, when I should be happy, I can laugh loudly. I can follow my heart, but I can't control it. When I should be sad, I can cry loudly. Do as you please, integrate into it, but transcend it. Finally control it. Only in this way could you absorb the infinite power of desire between heaven and earth and not be affected by the obsession of the infinite creatures in it. You could always keep your heart unchanged. That was the highest realm. Once you could do that, your own realm would increase at an incredible speed in an instant and enter a completely different level. Once the realm was high, you could control your own power to a more subtle level. You could clearly control every bit of power. Yin Hongya? Chen Shi? Yi Qing, no, it should be Di Shitian, looked at Yin Hongya in his arms with a smile and a face full of happiness. She had actually closed her eyes and fallen asleep. Looking at the beautiful face that was exactly the same as Chen Shi's, his heartstrings couldn't help but tug. Was this an illusion or reality? Was it Yin Hongya or Chen Shi? No matter whether this world is real or not, since I've woken up, let me experience this life personally, feel the things of the mortal world, and experience the life of an ordinary person that I couldn't experience in my previous life. Hongya, my promise to you is still valid. Di Shitian digested the decades of experience in this world one by one. A relaxed smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he lovingly kissed Hongya's forehead. His eyes flashed with confidence. If he wanted to be the emperor, heaven and earth couldn't stop him. Di Shitian, who had recovered his memory, was not anxious. Just like before, he blended into this world, lived seriously, and experienced everything in life. He could use this world to comprehend himself. He was not in a hurry to speak. He had long since known that the passage of time in the realm of desire was different from the passage of time outside. In the blink of an eye in the outside world, several springs and autumns would have passed in the realm of desire. Even if the heavenly tribulation was bombarding his demonic body, he was confident. Even if he relied on his own instincts, with the Huangji true force in his body, he would not be afraid of it in a short period of time. Although the tribulation lightning was scary, at the end of its destruction, there was an endless power of creation. When the Huangji true force was first formed, it relied on the power of creation contained within the tribulation lightning to form. He wanted to use the heavenly tribulation to temper his demonic body. Rumble. The tribulation lightning above his head continued to bombard Di Shitian. At this moment, under the nourishment of the boundless spirit Qi in the surroundings, the black tiger's body continuously expanded at a speed that was visible to the naked eye, growing taller and taller. But now, it had grown from 1,000 feet to its current size of 2,000 feet. Although its skin and flesh had been torn apart by the tribulation lightning, its body was faintly glowing with a dark treasure light. Its wounds were also healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Standing proudly under the thousands of lightning bolts, it was as if an ancient demon god had descended, its power boundless. In Di Shitian's body, there was an earth-shattering change. Because Chun Shi had extracted the momentary divine splendor from the seal of the fourth demonic vein, the enormous power of desire that had been accumulating in the demonic vein for all these years suddenly roared like an angry sea. The power of desire that was as black as ink rushed out of the demonic vein on the spot, surging towards the other 3 demonic veins, and rushed into the heart. Bang! The power of desire was like an angry lion, directly rushing into the demonic spirit residence and rampaging madly in the demonic spirit residence. The demonic spirit residence grew stronger as Di Shitian grew stronger. After a series of breakthroughs, the demonic spirit residence had now become the size of a pond, with a demon refining cauldron in the center. The power of desire in the 4th demonic vein was the power of anger. Anger was also one of the 7 emotions and 6 sensory pleasures. The matters of the world were often caused by anger, resulting in countless tragedies. Anger also represented a violent and violent rage, incomparably ferocious, with terrifying destructive and corrosive power. Moreover, it occupied the demonic spirit residence, but did not enter the demon refining cauldron. Instead, it gathered endlessly in the demonic spirit residence, turning into a pitch-black wave that filled every corner of the demonic spirit residence, crazily crashing in all directions, attacking the entire demonic spirit residence. As soon as the ferocious power of desire appeared, it wanted to vent its anger from being imprisoned, rolling up shocking waves again and again. Roaring, it transformed into various terrifying fierce beasts: the primordial ape, the jade wave purple squirrel, the raging flood dragon, and so on, condensed into various shapes and fiercely bombarded the demonic spirit residence. That momentum was actually about to smash the demonic spirit residence into smithereens, completely destroying it. Roar! The primordial ape roared, stepping on the black waves. Beneath its feet, monstrous waves roared and surged. A sky-covering ape claw suddenly swung out above its head, stirring up the demonic spirit residence and causing it to shake violently wherever it passed. The claw seemed to contain a terrifying power that could destroy the heavens and earth, and was about to attack the demonic spirit residence's walls, breaking the demonic spirit residence. Even the raging waves below it strangely calmed down under this claw, as if they were also afraid. Ding dong! However, at this critical moment, the seven sins demonic zither that had been nurtured in the demonic spirit residence suddenly emitted thousands of rays of divine light. The 9 strings of the zither vibrated on their own, producing mysterious melodies. With the 7 sins as the center, countless sound waves scattered, turning into musical notes that connected to form an airtight sound net. It descended from the sky, binding the entire demonic spirit residence in an instant. Then, it flew into the air and landed on top of the primordial ape, emitting endless divine light to suppress the raging desire. Rumble. After an unknown amount of time, the 3rd-grade black lotus in the demon refining cauldron was like a bottomless pit, crazily swallowing all the power in the cauldron. The power of the heavens and earth and the power of desire that surged in from the outside did not even stop for a moment, instantly entering the black lotus. On the black lotus, the 3rd-grade black lotus, which was slightly dimmer than the other 2 grades, suddenly brightened and quickly became the same color as the other positions. At the same time, the huge power of desire contained in the 3rd-grade black lotus suddenly broke through the walls and completely surged into the black lotus seed in the center of the black lotus. When it gushed out, it faintly turned into pure, royal, true power. Then, it gathered with the other true power in the black lotus and magically fused together. The royal true power faintly contained 3 kinds of desires. Boom! The black lotus shook, and thousands of needle-like divine light burst out from the 3rd-grade black lotus. The lotus shook, and the 11 runes on the black lotus turned into a long river of runes that revolved around the black lotus. The divine light on the black lotus was like the divine splendor of the sun and moon, constantly flowing. A figure condensed on the black lotus without warning. It was Shirtion, stepping on the black lotus. His expression carried a trace of worry and a rare joy. The 3rd transformation of the demon core is complete. Chun-Shi, it's all thanks to you this time. If it weren't for the timely appearance of the moment divine flower and triggering my memories, I might really have been tricked by the realm of desire and would have sunk into it forever. Beyond redemption. The 3rd transformation of the demon core, with the mask of the ultimate emperor, I am the Demon King. Shirtion's chest was still suppressing the anger. Now, with the 3rd transformation of the demon core, with the mask of the ultimate emperor, he would rise to the 4th transformation of the demon core. The realm of the ancient Demon King. Who is the Demon King? I am the Demon King. An arrogant and domineering aura arose spontaneously, and a strange light flashed in his cold eyes. He noticed the abnormality in the demon residence. Chun-Shi extracted the divine splendor of my 4th demon vein, and now the power of anger is beginning to erupt. No wonder. But now, be obedient and be tamed by me. Shirtion thought for a moment and understood what was happening in front of him. The divine splendor filled the demon vein, sealing the power of desire in the demon vein. According to the plan, after mastering the first 3 demon veins in his body, he would begin to use the ultimate Emperor True Force to break through the 4th demon vein, constantly breaking through the divine splendor and opening up the demon vein. This method was gentler and could be done bit by bit. But Chun-Shi's extraction caused the gentleness to become irritable, and all the power of desire erupted, resulting in the current situation. Fortunately, the 7 sins suppressed it. Otherwise, although it might not necessarily destroy the demon residence, it would at least cause some damage to the demon residence. Demon Refining Cauldron, Devour Desire. Tion looked at the torrential power of desire in the demon residence. Not only was he not afraid, but he was also looking forward to it. With a thought, the demon refining cauldron immediately began to show its power. The 3-legged jade cauldron suddenly began to rotate counterclockwise, and suddenly, a terrifying hurricane swept up in the demon residence, emitting a terrifying, devouring power that was countless times stronger than before. It covered the entire demon residence. The reason why the Heaven-grade demon residence was called Heaven-grade was because the demon refining cauldron was the key. It suppressed the demon residence and could refine thousands of forces. At this moment, when it showed its power, the originally incomparably ferocious power of anger was immediately swept into the cauldron without any resistance. After waves of power of anger rushed into the cauldron, it turned into a long river. It seemed to be roaring. Power of anger, enter my black lotus. Tion covered the sky with his palm and directly stretched out his right hand towards the long river. He grabbed it, captured it, and stepped on it. The black lotus under his feet trembled violently, emitting a tyrannical, devouring power. It restrained the power of anger. It was swept into the black lotus. Rumble. As soon as the power of rage entered the black lotus, a drastic change occurred. The black lotus trembled unceasingly. Like an inflated balloon, it started to swell violently. In the blink of an eye, it had more than doubled in size. With a crash, countless black lights burst out, intertwining and covering the black lotus. A huge amount of power of anger crazily rushed into the lotus. In just a few breaths, all the power of anger in the 4th demon vein in the demon residence was swallowed like a whale sucking in water. Countless divine lights shone on each other. In the black lotus, there were traces of terrifying power spiraling. Unknowingly, the 3rd-grade black lotus suddenly had an additional grade, becoming a 4th-grade black lotus. Those who have votes, please cast a few votes. To be continued, please go to www.chidian.com for more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 436. 4th-grade Black Lotus. With the addition of the power of wrath, the Black Lotus had transformed from the 3rd grade to the 4th grade. However, the luster of the new 1st grade was much dimmer than the original 3rd grade. Inside, there was not the royal true force, but the power of wrath of the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Inside, there was still the power of desire. It was clearly separated from the other parts of the Black Lotus, and the royal true force could not enter. Moreover, it was also unable to mobilize the power of wrath. However, with the addition of the 1st grade, the aura of the Black Lotus suddenly increased by several times. In the body, all the power of wrath was like a swallow returning to its nest. It continuously rushed in and occupied the new 1st grade space. The more power of wrath entered, the more the luster of the new 1st grade space gradually increased. Good. 3rd transformation monster core, 4th grade Black Lotus. Tion could not suppress the ecstasy in his heart. He could clearly feel that after the Black Lotus merged with the power of joy, the Black Lotus had become several times stronger. The Black Lotus itself had become tougher and stronger. Moreover, the Black Lotus itself was Tian's monster core. The stronger the Black Lotus, the stronger his strength. The tougher the Black Lotus, the harder it was to be destroyed. As long as the Black Lotus was not destroyed, he would not die. As for the newly added 4th grade, it was a container for a new kind of power of desire. It was used to store and absorb other kinds of power of desire, so that one could absorb the new power of desire without being affected by it, and continuously gather it into the body. When the Black Lotus in the body was full of Huangji true power, and a new fourth grade stored abundant power of desire. It would reach the peak of the third transformation of the monster core. At that time, it would be the time to experience the test of desire again. This feeling is more than 10 times stronger than before. Mastering 3 types of power of desire, my cultivation speed has increased by 9 times compared to normal. Even if he didn't deliberately circulate his cultivation technique, he could clearly feel that in the world, whether it was the power of desire or the power of the world, they were all rushing into his body, endlessly converging towards the demon palace. This kind of speed was really not a normal, kind of pleasurable feeling. Almost every time he breathed, he could feel the power in his body increasing. It's time to deal with the heavenly tribulation. After bombarding me for such a long time, if it weren't for my strong demonic body, I would have been blown to smithereens. Dishurkin's gaze suddenly turned cold and sharp. His mind instantly returned to his body, and he temporarily put everything else aside. Outside, the heavenly tribulation continued to bombard him with incomparable ferocity. It was as if they were determined to completely erase him from this world. Look, in the sky above the vast grassland, a huge 3-colored tribulation cloud covered the sky. Countless bolts of lightning flashed through the clouds as a vast pressure spread out in all directions. If there were any other living beings nearby, they would probably all be pressed to the ground. That pressure was so terrifying that even the air seemed to be frozen. Bolts of lightning fell down like raindrops. Below, there was a black tiger that was 600 meters tall. Its entire body emitted a shocking aura of a king. Just by standing there, it gave off a terrifying feeling that it could not be shaken. The boundless power that burst out from its body made it look like an ancient demon god. Every time the purple king mark on its forehead flashed, it could make its aura soar. However, under the heavenly tribulation, it had been passively receiving the tribulation thunder. Countless wounds were blasted all over its body. Some of them were so deep that the bones could be seen. It looked abnormally terrifying. Suddenly, from the black tiger, a thick, ink-like, demonic aura suddenly spurted out. It quickly spewed out from the countless pores all over its body. In the blink of an eye, it formed a strong demonic aura that covered its entire body. The tribulation thunder that was originally blasting on its body was blocked by the demonic aura. Even if it was violently tumbling, it did not fall on the monster's body. At the same time, a thick layer of black divine light appeared on the monster's body. It quickly flowed all over its body. Wherever the black light went, countless granulation appeared on the edges of all the wounds. Then, at a speed visible to the naked eye, it quickly closed and healed. In a few breaths, its entire body was completely restored. The imperial true force in its body quickly traveled through its body and refined the tribulation thunder that was wantonly destroying its body. Boom! His tightly shut eyes suddenly opened, and a shocking aura instantly exploded out, causing a terrifying shockwave to spread out in all directions, overbearingly repelling all the power in the surroundings. Heavenly tribulation is also unable to do anything to this king. Raising his eyes, a pair of tiger eyes shone brightly. They burst out 3 feet away, full of dominance, looking at the tribulation cloud above his head. Domineeringly, he spat out a cold sentence. Whoosh! Opening its bloody mouth, it faced the void and sucked fiercely. Suddenly, a hurricane rolled up in the void. All the air and energy crazily rushed into the tiger's mouth. His entire body also violently expanded. It was a violent expansion like an inflated balloon. In the blink of an eye, it had expanded to more than 800 feet. It was as if it had swallowed the sky into its stomach. Roar! Suddenly, an unprecedentedly domineering tiger roar came out of Shurtian's mouth. This roar could be said to have gathered all the chi in its body and even more than half of the imperial true force in its body. It rushed up to its throat and let out a terrifying tiger roar that could destroy heaven and earth. The tiger roar shook the heaven and earth. frightening ghost god. The entire exquisite pagoda, as if hundreds of millions of heavenly lightning had exploded at the same time, shaking the void violently. In front of and around him, the space was shaken to the point of collapse and even annihilation. Waves of black sound waves surged like a tide towards the tribulation cloud above his head. Bang! This tiger roar, roaring above his head, caused the thousands of lightning to collapse on the spot. Even the endless pressure emitted by the tribulation cloud seemed to have dissipated in an instant. It was as if they were facing the anger of a supreme emperor. When the emperor was angry, corpses would fall for thousands of miles. Even the heavens and earth would be affected by the emperor's anger. Countless sound waves surged like a tide, enveloping the entire tribulation cloud and constantly attacking. Every sound wave was constantly shaking violently. Wherever it passed, the space was almost unavoidably distorted. Enveloping the tribulation cloud, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of violent vibrations on the spot, the tribulation cloud was shaken into dust. Suddenly, a large area of the tribulation cloud was constantly crushed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a moment, all the tribulation cloud was completely annihilated. Crash! Just at the moment when the tribulation cloud dissipated. In the void, a tricolored light pillar appeared out of thin air, descending from the sky, ignoring everything. Even the sound waves could not have the slightest effect on it. It crossed the boundary of time and space. It fell straight on D. Shirtian's body, completely covering his entire body. At the same time, D. Shirtian clearly felt that in this heavenly divine light, a pure energy surged into his body like a tide. This energy, after a brief observation, was found to be the three forces of the five elements: metal, wood, and water. And it was the purest of the five elements. Once it entered his body, it directly integrated into the whole demon body's flesh and blood. Roar! This energy, not only was it pure, but it was also terrifyingly huge. Once it surged into the body, it did not transform into cultivation, but only blindly strengthened the physical body. Once it entered the flesh and blood, it was completely integrated and absorbed without the slightest reluctance. Every cell in the body was full of energy, frantically dividing and spreading, and the demon body began to expand violently. From 2,000 feet, it kept growing crazily, and with a whoosh, it grew by a few hundred feet. That powerful feeling of power gave people a strange feeling of valiance. This was the reward given by heaven and earth to those who had survived the calamity, and it was also the recognition of heaven and earth. With this pure energy, not only did the injuries in his body disappear, but the energy in his body was also completely restored to its peak state. His demon body grew to 3,000 feet, and every inch of his flesh and blood contained a shocking amount of power. He had a feeling that even a casual pounce like this could crush a 1,000-foot mountain into powder. With a step, the earth was about to split open. With a roar, it shook the world, and even ghosts and gods were shocked. When the demon body reached 3,000 feet, the light pillar that condensed around it dissipated. With a flash of black light, D. Shirtian returned to his human form again, wearing a black robe. The majesty on his body was even stronger than before. Suddenly, the seven sins demonic zither and tiger soul flew out of his body at the same time. The strings on the seven sins demonic zither vibrated, emitting waves of tempting music. His mind was constantly daydreaming, and the desire in his body was rising. Around him, a massive amount of desire power formed a tornado and entered the zither. The body of the zither also became pitch black under the infusion of countless desire power. On the body of the zither, countless divine lights flashed. They intertwined to form a large, pitch-black cocoon. The seven sins has been promoted again. Seeing this scene, D. Shirtian could not help but feel a burst of joy. Last time, the seven sins demonic zither had undergone a transformation, and it was promoted from a supreme grade instrument to a lower grade instrument. Now, With his breakthrough to the third transformation of the Yaodan, it attracted a massive amount of desire power and stepped into the promotion process at the same time. It was going to be promoted to a middle-grade instrument. This was the magical part of a natal instrument. It could be continuously promoted along with the improvement of its master, and it had unlimited possibilities. However, when the tiger's soul flew out, it was surrounded by a golden divine light. Within the saber light, there was a thick smell of blood, containing boundless dominance, and a murderous aura that shocked the 9 heavens. The fish bone-like patterns on the tiger's soul saber appeared even more vivid and lifelike. The tiger's soul's edge became even sharper, bringing with it a fiendish aura. The figure of a divine tiger was faintly discernible within the saber. There was a spirituality in the saber. The tiger's soul has finally completed its transformation. It is now a middle-grade instrument. With the sharpness of the tiger's soul, who can compete with it? Di Shirtian reached out and held the tiger's soul in his hand. His eyes became abnormally bright. He placed his left hand on the saber and gently stroked it. The tiger's soul released waves of saber cries, and the green bead on the tiger's soul became even greener. The ability to devour souls and blood contained within the saber became even more powerful. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 437. The strongest thing about Tiger Soul was its unparalleled sharpness. It could devour souls and blood. The essence and blood of the enemies who died under Tiger Soul would be devoured by Tiger Soul along with their own souls, turning into the power of Tiger Soul. It would accumulate and become the foundation for another upgrade. With Tiger Soul sharpness, even a high-grade or supreme-grade magic weapon might not be comparable to it. Based on the current situation, I'm afraid that the next upgrade to a high-grade magic weapon, the spirituality in the saber, should be able to condense a saber soul. Its power will definitely increase greatly. Sakura looked at the 2 treasures in front of him with joy. Ever since he had refined the 7 sins demonic zither and the tiger soul, he had no intention of continuing to refine other life source celestial devices. These 2 were enough. After all, although the life source celestial device had the possibility of continuous advancement, it required a lot of energy and a lot of capital to cultivate. Especially Tiger's Soul, it only had the chance to be upgraded continuously in battle. When it really climbed to an unbelievable level, the number of souls that died under the Tiger Soul saber would be in the tens of millions or even billions. This was simply a weapon of slaughter. When the saber was drawn, there must be blood and lives must fall under the saber. When Tiger Soul shines again, heaven and earth will be the emperor. Who in the world can compete with it? As for 7 sins, Di Shirtian had already thought about how to upgrade and become stronger in the future. First, he had to find the legendary 9 spiritual pearls. Each of them was a divine item of heaven and earth. If he used all of them on the zither, it would definitely make 7 sins the strongest treasure in the world. The sound of the zither was accompanied by the power of heaven and earth, accompanied by the thunder in the sky and the wind in the void. That was a scene that made people yearn for. Clang! He gently stroked Tiger Soul a few times and put it back into the scabbard on his back. Tiger Soul's sharpness was restrained. It seemed that 7 sins needed a lot of time to upgrade. It could not be done in a short time. He did not pay too much attention to it. This was not the first time. Without thinking about anything else, he found an empty place to sit down. He closed his eyes and began to familiarize himself with the explosive power in his body. In particular, the 3rd demon meridian had been completely mastered. The imperial true power could be channeled inside. There was also the newly added 4th demon meridian. Although the 4th demon meridian was filled with a large amount of power of rage, it was still absorbing the power of desire in the void. It poured into the demon manor. However, the 4th demonic vein had already been opened. The power of desire was also constantly nourishing his physical body, allowing his demonic body to slowly adapt to the newly added power of rage. When he fully grasped it in the future, he would be able to circulate it without any hindrance and would be able to unleash the full potential of the power of rage. Although an explosive increase in strength could bring about a sense of power, it did not mean that one's strength would increase. On the contrary, an explosive increase in strength would often cause one's strength to decrease in the following period of time. The reason was very simple. If a sharp saber that could cut through gold and jade was in the hands of a child, it was a big problem whether the child would hurt the enemy first or hurt himself first. Whether he could wield it or not, it was a big problem. Only by absorbing this energy, completely mastering it, and familiarizing it to the point where it was as easy as waving one's arm, could it be considered as truly becoming a part of one's strength. After all these years, Tion was no longer a little demon who did not know anything. He had his own understanding of these things. So, he did not think about anything else. First, he silently ran the third tier of the Extreme King's shocking book. He kept refining his true power and familiarizing himself with the explosive increase in power in his body. Feeling the pure Emperor true power flowing through his demonic veins like a divine spring, the kind of carefree feeling made him gradually immerse himself in it. The exquisite pagoda's power of reversing time and space gave him plenty of time to familiarize himself with the power in his body and his new level. Every time he reached a new level, the way he looked at things changed. 1 year. For a whole year, Tion did not do anything. He just quietly absorbed the power in his body. Every day, he continued his habit of practicing his knife skills. He kept practicing the Extreme King's Wei knife skill in his mind, trying to figure out the second style of the knife skill. The increase in power had allowed him to develop some patterns. His swordsmanship was getting more and more exquisite. Every time he brandished his sword, Sakura could clearly feel the trajectories of heaven and earth in the void. When a sword was brandished along these trajectories, not only did it have a wonderful and comfortable feeling, it could also draw the power of heaven and earth from those trajectories onto the sword, bursting out in amazing power. Bang! On this day, Tion stepped forward, and the tiger soul in his hand was swinging one knife after another. Suddenly, the knife slashed forward heavily. In the void, the power of the sky and the earth was applied to the tiger soul. Suddenly, the tiger soul burst out a 1,000-foot-long knife aura and slashed the ground. The tiger soul's knife aura was very sharp. When it landed on the ground was cut in half like tofu. A bottomless knife scar appeared in front of him. Inside, there was a terrifying knife aura that was wantonly destroying everything. Looking at the black cocoon that was still floating in the air, Tiger's soul returned to its scabbard. He turned his head and looked at the stairway on the left. The stairway to heaven had 49 steps. At the end of the stairway to heaven was a door made of purple gold. It emitted a simple and ancient aura, and countless mysterious patterns appeared on it. It was very mysterious. It added a bit of ancient charm. At the end of the stairway was the pagoda door. Behind the door was the third heaven of the Linglong Treasure Pagoda. When he reached the first transformation stage, he pushed open the second door and entered the second layer of heaven. When he reached the second transformation stage, he tried to see if he could open the door and enter the third layer of heaven, but he couldn't. Back then, when he reached the 9th step of the stairway, he was pushed down by the vast force emitted by the stairway. At that time, Tion guessed that if he wanted to enter the third transformation stage, he would have to reach the third transformation stage. The first transformation stage could reverse time by 10 times. The second transformation stage could reverse time by 50 times. How many times could the third transformation stage reverse time? Tion's mind was filled with anticipation. With a wave of his sleeve, he walked towards the stairway without hesitation. There were 49 steps on the stairway. With every step, the pressure on one's body would become stronger. If one's strength was not enough, it would be impossible to pass. However, after opening the door, he would not have to go through so much trouble and could enter directly. Pada! Di stepped onto the first step. Suddenly, a tyrannical pressure burst out from the steps under his feet and fell on his body. It was enough to make a core formation stage cultivator lie down on the spot and roll down the stairs. However, for Di, this was nothing out of the ordinary. His current demonic body was so powerful that he could even face a cultivator at the peak of the body integration stage head-on. He didn't need any other power, just his physical body. This little bit of power did not affect him in the slightest. Without hesitation, he continued to walk up the stairs. Step by step, he easily reached the 9th step. Even at this point, he still did not circulate his royal true force. Although the pressure on his demonic body was immense, his steps were still steady and his body was still tall and straight. Today, I will open this door. Di secretly made up his mind. He had a hunch that behind this door, there must be something that could change his destiny waiting. The thing that he obtained in the heavenly demon secret realm was very likely behind this door. Bang, bang, bang. Under the heavy pressure, every step Chun took felt like he was shaking the mountain range, giving off muffled, rumbling sounds. Chun continued to rely on the strength of his physical body to climb up step by step. Under his clothes, the muscles all over his body wriggled unceasingly like dragons. When he climbed to the 23rd step, Di felt his entire demon body tremble violently. It was as if his flesh and blood were about to collapse. The pressure was too terrifying. He did not force it and immediately exhaled. Waves of Huangji, true force, gushed into his demon body like a fountain and quickly condensed a layer of protective shield around his body to block the pressure. Countless divine lights flashed around his body, and an astonishing demon aura soared into the sky like smoke signals. From afar, it was as if the heavens and earth were about to split open and break through the boundless pressure. His body also suddenly became lighter. The pressure was suddenly reduced, but he did not relax. He focused his mind and quickly climbed up. After breaking through to the 3rd transformation of the Yaodan, his strength had increased by almost 10 times. He was extremely tyrannical. Just by relying on his physical body, he was almost halfway up. Once again, he used the Huangji true force. For a moment, he displayed his peak combat strength. Step by step, he walked up domineeringly. With every step, there was a burst of air around him. His aura surged and set off a shocking wave of air. The pressure emitted by the stairway could no longer stop him. Almost without stopping for a moment, step by step, he steadily walked up the 49th stairway and reached the door of the ancient purple golden pagoda. Open! Spitting out a thunderous sound, he placed his right hand on the door and pushed with all his might. The royal realm true force poured into his arm without reservation, causing his entire arm to emit countless rays of divine light. Under the interweaving, this push had the force of 1,000 caddies. Even if it was a mountain, it would collapse on the spot. Ja. With a dull sound, this ancient door that seemed to have been standing here since ancient times was finally pushed open. Moreover, it was only pushed open a little bit. This door was really frighteningly heavy. It was almost certain that without a strong body like Di, even if other demons reached the 3rd transformation of the Yaodan, they might not be able to push this door open. The door slowly opened, and countless rays of light secretly ran out from the door. Standing in front of the door, Di could not help but close his eyes and take a deep breath. The fatigue in his body seemed to disappear with this breath. Phew! What rich spiritual energy! It's actually 10 times richer than the 2nd level. It's no worse than the blessed enclave outside. Di murmured in surprise. Sure enough, the 3rd transformation can actually reverse time by 100 times. 1 to 100, a year outside is 100 years here. A treasure, it's really a supreme treasure. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chitian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.